Jaden is the only one in the chat, and Jaden is leaving here, so we might just be talking to ourselves. But this is the voter guide for the Beaumont Municipal Election for May 3rd, 2025, which is very exciting. We are voting for a bunch of different things. We're going to be covering all of the different candidates who are in contested races on the ballot. We're voting for mayor, we're voting for city council, and we're voting for the school board or the BISD board of trustees. You sound like the kid that no one showed up to their birthday party. That's not true. It's just everyone has not showed up yet. It'll be fine. We are going through all the different candidates. And I want to preface all of this by saying this is my personal opinion. I am fallible and definitely did not do anywhere near the level of research that I should have done to probably speak as definitively as I'm going to be speaking about a lot of these candidates. But I think I've done more research than maybe the average voter, and have been kind of clued into a lot of the have been clued into a lot of the issues locally and kind of follow local politics a lot. So I'm going to be talking about all the different candidates because for every election, especially local elections, I'm always so frustrated by how little resources there are to, be an informed voter whenever I'm going to the poll. Whenever I was like growing up and going to vote for the first time, there were so many people on my ballot that I was just like, I have no clue what any of these names are or even any of these positions are. You kind of know like the top line, like mayor, president. You kind of know a lot of the top line positions, but a lot of those are very opaque and difficult to find and understand. So we're going to be talking about all of these different positions, what all of their different responsibilities are, and all of the different candidates that are running to fill those positions. Like I said, this is not definitive. Everything that I say is just going to be my total opinion. But I'm going to be referencing, I'm leaning so heavily, hey, this is an important PSA. Everybody go out and buy a newspaper. Doesn't matter where you buy it from. Just buy a local paper from any place where you find your local paper. Gosh, this chat is so slow. Anyway, out for real this time. Nice not to get canceled while educating the people. Try not to get it canceled. I will try not to do that, even though we've got some spicy tidbits about some of these candidates. It's going to be very exciting. I am leaning very, very heavily. Go and buy a newspaper. Go and subscribe to your local newspaper. I work for the Examiner newspaper here in Beaumont. I just do layout and design for them. I don't do any of our reporting. I am not on our editorial team, and everything that I say in this election guide completely represents my own personal opinion and in no way reflects the opinion of anybody at the Examiner. But I am very strongly leaning on published reporting from institutions like the Examiner, like the Beaumont Enterprise, like Channel 12, like Channel 6 and 4. All of these different news organizations are the only reason why we have any level of detail about any of these candidates at all. And a lot of TV stations are owned by huge national corporations that are administered from far off places. And newspapers are far more, in my opinion, which is biased, I guess. But in my opinion and experience, newspapers are a far more reliable source of high quality original reporting. And so go buy a newspaper. It is so vital to support institutions of reporting in your local city, regardless of where you're watching this from. Go buy a newspaper, because without those institutions of public reporting, we wouldn't know anything about these candidates. We wouldn't be in any kind of position to be able to hold our elected officials accountable for their decisions that they make or their past behaviors, without having people who are dedicating their time and their energy and their effort to reporting the truth to people who need that to make good decisions about how they vote for elected officials. So the news is vitally important. Your local news is so important, and so much here recently within the last few years. Giant private equity firms are just gobbling up small independent local papers and cutting them down to operate with the absolute minimum amount of resources so that they can make the absolute maximum amount of profit. And it has led to just news deserts all over our country, unfortunately. So go and support your local paper. Everything that I am going to be talking about in this election guide is sourced from reporting from local institutions of journalism. I don't have any of those institutions explicitly stated on here, but all of them, Channel 6 did like debates with all of the different city council candidates so that you can hear them speak in their own words. Those are on YouTube. The Enterprise has great like know your candidate stories where they issued a bunch of questions to candidates and got them to give them back written responses, and they just published those responses. The Enterprise keeps up with local city council events, but in particular has been doing what they've been doing for so long that there is a huge dearth of really high quality reporting in their archives about huge events from a long time ago. So like understanding what happened with like the TA takeover and with Calvin Walker and Woodrow Reese and David Moore and Odwin Samuel, all of that reporting is really you can find all of that reporting in these institutions of reporting, and that's where I've been getting a lot of this from. So all of this is highly sourced, and I can probably in the description of these videos post my sources, but I owe everything in these to those sources, and do not trust me to represent those sources accurately. I'm doing this live. I'm doing this off the seat of my pants. I'm doing it all from memory, even though I got slides for notes and stuff. So please do go and follow up behind me and check out the veracity of the things that I'm talking about for yourself with these public institutions of public information, public reporting, because that's where I got all this from. That said, everything that I'm going to be talking about here is my own personal opinion and doesn't reflect the opinions of any of those institutions of reporting, especially the Examiner does not reflect the opinions of anyone at any of those institutions other than what has been published. So we're going to jump right into it. I'm super excited about it. It's going to be really great. However, there are a couple of things that we need to kind of start off with understanding. City councils, local governance, in a lot of ways, their entire role for the city is to be a rubber stamp to facilitate business that happens in a given area. So there are a lot of things like in the mayoral candidate, I tried to find, especially for people like Robin Mouton, served as mayor for a term. And so I tried to go and tried to find like specific good or negative things that happened in her term or that she accomplished in her term. But like as an example, one of those things is OCI expanded their facilities and built a new plant that was worth like $1 billion underneath Robin Mouton's leadership. Robin Mouton herself in the Beaumont Enterprise says that this project was in the work for 11 years before she finally approved it during her term. And so my point there is simply that, Robin Mouton, as much as I guess you can credit her because it happened during her term, is kind of just serving a facilitating role of rubber stamping business and industrial developments that are happening in her area under her authority. That's not to say that she doesn't have authority and could not be antagonistic towards businesses on behalf of working class people in her city. It's just largely that's not the way that local politics works in America, and especially in smaller towns in America. So while there are going to be a couple of issues, I'm going to be able to say, see, this candidate is advocating for this, or this candidate did that. Those are hard ways to those are hard standards to judge what, like, the quality of their city councilmanship, or their mayoral term. Those are hard ways to judge the quality of how good or bad of a mayor they were. To me, a far more effective way is looking at the ways that the city is managed, and looking at the ways that workers are protected in cities underneath people's individual leadership. Like, because Robin Mouton can rubber stamp OCI building an entire new plant there. She has the ability to demand of OCI, hey, I want you to, before I give you this rubber stamp, I want you to do these specific things to help your workers. Or, like, if a business, especially if the city is treating their workers unfairly, the city council has a large amount of authority to be able to intervene on behalf of working class people in their city and say, hey, cut this out. We're not doing this anymore. You're going to treat these people fairly. And so, instead of looking at like accomplishments, looking at the way that city administrators and city leaders work to protect working class people in their city, and work to wisely facilitate investments and the accumulation of resources for their city so that they can better take care of working class people in their city, to me, are far more effective ways of gauging whether or not a candidate is going to be a good fit for a given position. So we're going to be talking about a lot of different candidates. We're going to kind of be talking about what some of their policy stances are and policy issues are. But we are also going to be talking about a couple of different ways that candidates have in the past or plan to in the future help protect working class people in their city. So without further ado, without further preface, we're gonna jump right into it. This is the voter guide for the Beaumont Municipal Election. Voting happens on April 22nd through April 29th. It starts happening, early voting starts happening April 22nd to April 29th at these various locations here. You do want to pay attention to these times because for April 22nd to April 26th, you can go from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. The polls are closing kind of early. And then specifically on Sunday, April 27th, the polls don't open until 12 and then close at 5. But for the entire week before the May 3rd election, April 28th through April 29th, polls are open 12 hours a day from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. You shouldn't have a problem during early voting getting in pretty quickly and being able to vote pretty quickly. But I will say, like, if there is any kind of line there at the end of the day, they usually do close those doors at 7 p.m., even if there are people in line. That's going to be a far more important thing to have in mind for actual election day on May 3rd from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. These are all the different locations that you can go and vote. Places like the Amelia Elementary School, the BISD Administration Building, Rogers Park, Carlton Pollard Elementary, the Jefferson County Courthouse, a whole bunch of different places that you can go and you can cast your ballot. Like I said, that the voting times are 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and sometimes they are nice and they will let people in the line at 7 p.m. kind of work their way inside before they close the doors, but they don't necessarily have to do that. And if you are there at 7 p.m., they might close the door and you are in line, like if that line is going out the building, they can and may close the doors on you. So I very much recommend that you get there at the very least before 6 if you are going to go on voting day. The registration deadline for the April 3rd election was, for the May 3rd election, was on April 3rd. So hopefully you're registered to vote. If you are not, sorry, sad day, better luck next time. You can check to see if you are registered to vote at texas.gov or at that link there. I can put that link right here in the chat. There you go, buddies. You can click on that link in the chat and you can go immediately and insert a little bit of your information and see if you are registered to vote. if you were registered to vote for the November election, you almost certainly are going to be registered to vote for this one. But don't take my word for that. Go in and double check that you are registered before you go, so that you don't waste your time. Whenever you get there, you need to have a valid form of photo ID. So you're going to get to the polling location. You're going to go inside. There's going to be a table of very nice election workers. Hey, everybody, you should thank your election workers, because they give up huge amounts of their time to work very long hours just to facilitate our ability and constitutional right to go in and participate in the democratic process to elect our leaders. So election workers are awesome and are almost all volunteers. Ham Solo, who may be in the chat later, is an election worker. He volunteers his time every election to go and sit at polling places and help facilitate people's right to the democratic process. So whenever you get to your polling location, you're going to walk inside. You're going to see a table full of election workers. There's probably going to be like 3 different election workers there. They're going to call you out to the table, and they're going to ask for your form of photo ID. In Texas, these are the 7 different valid forms of photo ID. If you have a Texas driver's license, that will be fine. It doesn't necessarily have to be a real ID driver's license either. It just can't be expired. But, and see, this is when I wish the Ham was in the chat. I think even if it's expired, you can fill out a little thing and get an exemption if I remember correctly, but don't count on that. If it is expired, make sure that it's not expired before you go to vote. Live. Okay, how do I do this? I'm explaining it to you. So you're going to go to your polling location. There's going to be a table with 3 people at it. You're going to give them your valid form of photo ID, one of these 7 different forms of photo ID. Make sure that it's not expired. They're going to enter you into the system. They're going to have you select one of 3 blank ballots that are in front of them. You select your ballot, and you go to one of the different polling machines. At the machine, there's going to be a little slot on your right-hand side. You take that blank paper ballot and you put it into the little slot. It's going to get sucked up into the machine. It's going to write a unique code onto that paper ballot, and then it's going to bring up a program on your screen with the different candidates on the ballot. This is what it's going to look like. Oh, I just remembered I can't vote till September this year. How unfortunate, Liv. I'm so sorry. This is what your ballot is going to look like if you were able to vote. Sorry. Once you put your blank one into the machine, it'll get sucked up. It'll write a unique code onto the ballot, and it'll give you this screen. Here is a zoomed in version of it. It'll give you some instructions, and then it'll have each little block for each different candidate. And you will, on the little touch screen, tap each bubble to vote for each one of your candidates. You do want to pay attention here. Most of these say vote for none or one, so you can only select one at a time. Council member at large, you can select 1 or 2, because there are 2 different council members at large, so you can select 2 of these different candidates. That is the only one that you're going to be able to select 2 bubbles. So you want to make sure that you do that. You select the bubbles for all the different candidates. You are only going to get, if we go back here, you can see we have the mayor and we have council member at large. Everybody in the city of Beaumont is going to get both of those on their ballot. Then you have council member for Ward 1, Ward 2, Ward 3, Ward 4. You are only going to get on your ballot, whenever you're registered to vote, it's going to log your address there. And so the machine is going to know what ward you live in. You're only going to get whatever ward you live in on your screen to vote for. So you're not going to see, like, if you live in Ward 1, you're not going to see Ward 2 or Ward 3. So it might not look exactly like this. And don't freak out if you're like, oh no, I really wanted to vote for Corey Crenshaw in Ward 1, but I live in Ward 2. If you don't live in the ward, you can't vote for that candidate. Sorry. Same thing for the Beaumont ISD Board of Trustees. You will only get the candidates for the district that you live in for the school board. But yeah, this is a zoomed in version of it. It's going to give you some instructions. You're going to see each little block. You select a little bubble. And then once you finish everything, you click that you're done. And it's going to spit your paper ballot back out with all of your choices printed onto the ballot. You have not voted yet. Once you have that paper ballot back in your hand, you still have not voted. All you did was you selected the candidates that you wanted and got it printed onto the ballot. You have to then go to a separate machine, and there will be election workers to walk you through all of this if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed, but it's pretty simple. Once you get there, it'll be simple. You will then go to a separate machine where you will submit your ballot to be tabulated in the future. There will be it'll be like towards the exit, and there will be an election worker next to it. So you go over to that machine, you put your ballot into that machine, and now your ballot is getting ready to be counted. But your ballot has not been submitted if you just fill in the bubbles and then don't remember to grab your paper ballot and put it into the second machine. So that's really important. You want to remember to do that. Any questions from Liv, the only person in chat? Maybe. Before we move on to mayor. Okay. Without objection, we're going to move on to start talking about your different mayoral candidates here. You have 5 different people that are going to be on your ballot running for mayor. Randy Feldschau, who was formerly a currently right now is, but is not seeking re-election for a council member at large on the city council. He's running for mayor. If he loses this, he won't be on city council anymore. That's unfortunate. Robin Mouton was mayor for one term, the term before this current one. Roy West, but before she was mayor, she was a city council member for Ward 4. Roy West has not held a position of public office until he was elected mayor. He is currently our mayor right now. Chris Jones has also never held elected office, but has run for mayor a couple of times now. Jude Paredes also has never held public office, but has run for mayor a couple of times now. So we're going to talk about each one of these candidates for mayor. But before we can talk about these different candidates for mayor, we have to talk about my man, Kenneth Williams. Kenneth Williams is the current city manager of Beaumont. Kenneth Williams was hired under Robin Mouton's leadership to be our city's city manager. If you're not familiar with the way that the authority structured hierarchy of our city works, city council, while they do have authority over the city, does not tend to the day-to-day operations of the city, and does not facilitate even like big picture work towards like creating budgets or investigating candidates for police chief. The person who tends to the day-to-day operation of our city, who oversees the administration of, water bills and trash collection and the firefighters and the police and every other thing that happens in our city. The person who oversees all of that is this man, Kenneth Williams, not the city council. City council, Kenneth Williams does serve underneath the authority of city council. And city council is technically in charge of what Kenneth Williams does. But because Kenneth Williams is acting on a day-to-day basis, he has a very high level of authority over what happens in our city. And city council more steers Kenneth Williams in what direction they want him to go. So like lots of people on city council are like business owners, or people who like have other jobs. City council is really just a part-time position. And so they can't be expected to put together city budgets or go and look for nominees for police chief. That is what Kenneth Williams does. So Kenneth Williams has an enormous amount of power in our city. He has an enormous amount of administrative power in our city. He has the ability to, facilitate whether or not our policies in our city lead towards economic development or economic stagnation, or whether or not crime rates in our city are whether or not crimes are like effectively seen to, or whether or not the police department or the fire department is not managed correctly, and so people are not as adequately protected. All of these things are things that Kenneth Williams has authority over. And so his position should not be treated lightly. Kenneth Williams is not an elected official. Kenneth Williams does not get elected by the people. He gets hired by the city council. We had a previous city manager who was the city manager for a very long time, and he retired. So the city council, under Robin Mouton's leadership, started looking for a new city manager. Kenneth Williams is the person that they found from like a suburb, basically, of Austin called Buda. And they thought that he did a really good job being the city manager in Buda. And so they hired him to come and be the city manager here in Beaumont. In my opinion, Kenneth Williams has done a very not great job facilitating the administration of our city for a lot of different reasons, which we're going to talk about here. But because I've been so frustrated by the way that Kenneth Williams' administration has happened, whether or not a city leader has been supportive or antagonistic towards Kenneth Williams is going to weigh heavily upon my decision to vote or not vote for a given candidate for a position of city leadership. So you're going to see pretty much on every candidate in this election guide some note on whether or not that candidate has been supportive of or antagonistic towards the leadership of Kenneth Williams. It might sound kind of crazy to let that influence my decision so strongly, but we're about to get into some of the details of why Kenneth Williams has been kind of not the most awesome city manager. Starting with, whenever Kenneth Williams was hired, seemingly, the city of Beaumont broke our charter by conceding to give him what I would call an inordinate severance package. The city manager, according to the city charter, is supposed to be hired and fired at will, and so even though we are firing him, he would still be on the payroll, and we would still be paying him for a year after he was fired, which giving him the severance package seems to go beyond the scope of what the city charter has in mind for the role of city manager. Kenneth Williams was insistent that he would not take on the role of city manager if he was not given this specific severance package. We're going to talk about some of the details here. His severance package stipulates that he is to be paid his 1 year annual salary of $250,000, which it's higher now. Spoilers. Upon termination. So we would have to pay Kenneth Williams his $250,000 salary, more than $250,000 salary, because we give retirement contributions for him. We pay for his vehicle. We pay for his phone. We pay for a lot of different stuff for him. So benefits on top of the $250,000, all of that would continue for a full year after his termination, even in the case of incompetence or inefficiency in the performance of the city manager's duties. I guess that's kind of understandable. Like, incompetence and inefficiency is kind of subjective. And so maybe I think I did a good job and they think I did a bad job. And so even if they fire me, they should still have to pay me. But also, and again, these are points in his severance package that Kenneth Williams presented to the city council that he demanded be in his hiring contract. He's to be paid his 1 year salary, even in the case of termination for incompetence or inefficiency, even in the case of knowingly falsifying records or documents related to the city's activities, and even in the case of knowingly misrepresenting material facts to the council or other city officials. So, in addition to one of the stipulations that was in the severance package that did actually get taken out while negotiations were happening with city council was even in the case of sexual relationships with a subordinate, he's still to be paid his 1 year of salary after his termination. It feels psychotic for the city manager. Is correct. It feels psychotic for the city manager to, before being hired by the city, demand that they give him a severance package, even in the case of lying, falsifying documents, and lying to city council, like committing fraud, defrauding the city. Even in that case, we have to continue to pay Kenneth Williams a year after he's been terminated. Robin Mouton, the mayor at the time, Audwin Samuel, Charles Durio, and A.J. Turner all voted to accept this employment package, this employment agreement with Kenneth Williams. Not only voted to accept it, but especially people like Robin Mouton were campaigning for, Kenneth Williams. He's going to come in, he's going to grow our city, he's going to, we're going to be great, we're going to be big, he's going to do good things. And so we really need to give him this severance package to get him here, because we don't want to lose him. I don't understand why we would ever make this concession to any employee of the city, much less the most powerful employee of the city. Dude, that's almost the same thing as electing a felon as the president. Yeah, weird. Why would anybody? That's crazy. Why would anybody do that? Live. So yeah, that was a little nuts to agree to his severance package. And so Robin Mouton, there's an argument to be made that the other bad things that happened with Kenneth Williams that we're about to talk about, there's an argument to be made that that happened after Robin Mouton's time, and she couldn't have known that he was going to do those things, even though she's been supportive of Kenneth Williams even to today. There's an argument to be made that she couldn't know those things, but to not give this severance package to the most powerful employee of the city, right? I don't know, that just the idea that a leader of the city thought that it was appropriate to give the severance package to the city manager feels not great. So that's enough reason for me to say, I don't know, you're going to have to show me some real good stuff before I ever think about voting for you again. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Every budget that Kenneth Williams has put together has deficit spent, which means that we have expended more. The city has expended more in its budget than it takes in revenue. We only do not go into a deficit, go into debt essentially, because we have been spending out of our savings account, essentially our rainy day fund. We did have not every budget, but a lot of the budgets before Kenneth Williams did also project deficit spending, but by the end of the year did not actually deficit spend and did not actually have to dip into the rainy day fund in order to cover city's expenses. Every budget that Kenneth Williams has made and executed has spent out of the rainy day fund. And it has been depleted by millions of dollars at this point. This most recent budget that was put together plans to deficit spend $3.5 million. And that was a contentious issue with City Council, the idea of continuing to deficit spend like that. And so the city actually recently, at Kenneth Williams' provocation, rewrote what the city's definition of deficit spending is to mean, oh, well, if we actually have funds somewhere, like in a rainy day fund, that are able to cover the deficit, that's technically we're not going into a deficit, like going into debt because we couldn't cover all of our expenditures. We could cover everything, so technically that's not a deficit, when that's not what deficit spending means. But the city's official, that definition of deficit spending was adopted by the city at Kenneth Williams' provocation. And so our official definition, city, next year's budget, Kenneth Williams will not have deficit spent whenever it comes to creating next year's budget. Having completed this one, Kenneth Williams will not have deficit spent from this one, but he did he just pulled from a rainy day fund, which has, like I said, been progressively becoming more and more depleted throughout Kenneth Williams' tenure. Every budget that Kenneth Williams has created has deficit spent. The first budget that Kenneth Williams created in 2023, after that budget was created and presented to council, the city chief financial officer Todd Simoneau, resigned. He quit after working with the city for 18 years and being only 2 years away from retirement. He quit after creating Williams' first budget. In a public letter, Simoneau said, "During the most recent budget process, I raised financial concerns about the proposed budget and feel that those concerns were not fully addressed in the final budget that was submitted to the council, and those concerns could adversely affect the future financial condition of the city." That sounds bad. That doesn't seem great, right? Right? For the CFO to quit after just a little. For the CFO to quit after the creation of your first budget, saying that it could lead to future financial, may adversely affect the future financial condition of the city, seems not great. Page 1, and just as an example of the way that these budgets have been created in Kenneth Williams' time, on page 1 of the most recent budget for 2025, the budget that was proposed in September 2024, the first page started by underreporting collected tax revenue from 2023 by $40 million. $40 million error on the first page, my guy? What are you doing? Not only did it start off with a $40 million error, but it was full of ridiculous errors. The budget had to be amended and re-presented to the city council multiple times. The budget also projected $3 million in deficit spending. Awesome. While increasing, so we're gonna deficit spend by millions more dollars, while at the same time increasing the amount of revenue that's coming in. So we're deficit spending even though we're getting more revenue in. We're increasing the amount of revenue that's coming in by increasing water rates by 4% and sewer rates by 8%. We also increased tax collection rates as well. The budget also decreased the fire department's budget by $2 million. Okay, in the middle of creating this budget, Kenneth Williams was in the middle of contracting negotiations. Actually, no. The contract negotiations had not yet begun. They started the month after. But in the middle of right before he started creating this budget, he was about to be in contract negotiations, knew that he was about to be in contract negotiations with the fire department union, and knew that they wanted increased raises and wanted to hire more people. And so why he would not allocate for that extra spending instead of cutting the fire department's budget by $2 million is beyond me. It's almost like he just doesn't want to spend that money and is using his authority in creating this budget to pressure firefighters and make firefighters look bad. Like in the future, yo, hey Cameron, sound effects are off for the election stream. Sorry, buddy. It's almost like he's trying to pressure people into either conceding to his stipulations in negotiations or looking bad because like the next budget will go over budget because we underfunded the fire department by $2 million in this previous one. Like I said, not only are there insane things in this budget, but it's just full of errors and full of mistakes. And had to be represented to council multiple times. The final budget that council voted on was presented to them just, I think it was like 5 days before they actually voted on it. I think it was less than a week. And so city council, like literally, like there are council members who were having to go to like council members are oftentimes business owners, and they're having to go to like the accountants at their personal private business to get them to explain the budgets to them and why certain decisions are being made, because the budget's creation is just so opaque and difficult to understand because it's full of mistakes. So not only has Kenneth Williams deficit spent out of every budget that he's created, his budgets are oftentimes full of errors and used as tools to manipulate people in our city into getting his way. And then in December 2024, after that budget was created and adopted, the interim city CFO, after the previous CFO quit, the interim city CFO, Cheryl Ray, she resigned. Now, she didn't explicitly say that it was in protest the way that Todd Simoneau did, but it feels kind of crazy to Simoneau resigned in 2023 and Cheryl resigned in 2024. So in about a year, to burn through two separate chief financial officers right during the period of time whenever you're creating your budget feels bad. That feels not great. That arrow doesn't mean that's where you're at, right? Oops, I did forget to move the arrow. Thank you, buddy. There's been nobody here to hold me accountable. We're in the mayor section, technically. But we're talking about Kenneth Williams because... No way, you're still at the first point. We are at the second point. We're talking about Kenneth Williams because... oh boy, the second point. We're talking about Kenneth Williams because a city leader's either antagonism or support for him is going to heavily weigh whether or not I lean towards supporting those candidates. Anyways, deficit spent out of every budget that is created, burned through two chief financial officers in a year, and now we don't have a chief financial officer. We just didn't appoint a new one. One of the like assistant city managers is taking on. Oh yeah, that's another thing. We have two assistant city managers now. I think the previous guy didn't even have one, but he at the very least I know didn't have two. And collected all together, we're paying like the senior administration of the city like $1 million a year in salary. To put together this junk, this crap. Burned through two different CFOs, and now one of the assistant city managers is like acting as CFO right now. The thing that pisses me off the most is when our city wants to build new parks or freaking boat rides to attract tourists. Who the heck wants to come to Beaumont to tour, and why would you compete with other tourist cities, put the money towards something better, like a better sewage drainage system? That sounds great to me. Or, I mean, both. Why not facilitate the way that our money is spent in our city instead of spending $1 million a year on ridiculous and unnecessary city administration, instead of spending an extra $2 million a year in overtime towards the fire department because we're not staffing them correctly because the fire department is being mismanaged, instead of paying $150,000 to a consulting company to look around and see what we might want to spend a bond on. Like, we know what the issues here are in Beaumont. Why would we not? Why can we not just say this is what we are going to spend the bond on? To spend $150,000 on a consulting company to come in just to send a survey out to people. I mean, what? That's what I'm saying. The way that the city has been mismanaged has, depleted the budgets that the city has to be able to do things like, revitalize downtown, like they always are saying they want to do, and increase the quality of our infrastructure, like our sewage drainage systems. So, Kenneth Williams' mismanagement of the budget is a big point against him, and several city council members, we'll talk about them later, There are some city council members that have voted against these budgets and opposed them. Some city council members that have just blatantly, completely gone along with these budgets and been like, actually, this is fine. City needs to get their priorities straight. Yeah, seemingly. But the biggest issue with Kenneth Williams is all the drama with the firefighters. So we're going to go through that entire story. The Beaumont Firefighters Union, the Beaumont Firefighters Union, their contract expired in October of 2024. They have to negotiate a new contract with the city so that they can seamlessly move from one contract to the next and continue to serve the city under a contract that does right by the workers who, are putting their life and limb and safety on the line to protect and help Beaumont citizens, especially Beaumont's most needy and vulnerable citizens. Firefighters are awesome, and firefighters are like the front line of maintaining the quality of Beaumont's public safety. And so getting them a contract that adequately provides their needs sounds like a good idea. They needed to sign a new contract before their contract expired in October 2024. So the head of the union, Jeffrey Neeson, he reached out to Kenneth Williams in September 2023, more than a full year early, before the contract expired. Reached out to Kenneth Williams in 2023 after multiple attempts to contact the city manager. Neeson didn't hear back from Williams until February of 2024. Months later, like 4 months later, did Neeson finally hear back from Kenneth Williams, and Kenneth Williams started kind of talking about, oh yeah, we can set a date to start negotiating around this time. A date to start negotiating was tentatively set, but Williams pushed it back multiple times until suspending the meeting indefinitely in July of 2024. Remember, their contract expires in October of 2024. He's now put them off for more than 6 months to even set up the first meeting to start negotiating the contract. And it looks like, we'll make this point in a minute. He's been putting them off for months now. The union finally got its first meeting to start negotiating with Williams on October 7th, 2024, a week after the union's contract expired. Due to an evergreen policy in the union's contract, they have to work until September 2025 under the terms of the previous contract. So now the city agreed to negotiate a new contract by October 2024. They broke that agreement and have not successfully negotiated a new contract, have not even started to negotiate a new contract. They finally get their first meeting a week after the contract expired. All this time, the firefighters are 19 employees short, and so having to spend overtime to cover all of the different shifts to handle the various different needs of people in our city. And they need to renegotiate. Specifically, one of the things that they want to renegotiate is the way that new firefighters are hired and incentives for hiring new firefighters, so that they can make it easy to fill these 19 positions that they need to fill, so that they can stop spending overtime. All this time, the firefighters have been spending overtime, causing the city to go over budget, when we could have just negotiated this contract way sooner and stopped spending overtime this way. But the city's going to have to pay more if the firefighters successfully negotiate their raises, which is one of the things that they're negotiating for, and successfully negotiate increased staffing, which is one of the things that they're negotiating for. The city will have to pay more for firefighters. And so in the long run, Kenneth Williams has conveniently, due to his seeming ineptitude, not getting back with people like Neeson for months and months and months and months, due to his seeming ineptitude, has conveniently saved the city probably about $1 million by stalling on negotiating negotiating the contract with the firefighters and having to pay them adequately. Williams. So finally in October, did I hit all those points? Oh yeah, the union was negotiating for increased compensation to bring their pay in line with comparable cities, comparable sized cities. They were negotiating for an increase in their pay of about 24%. They were negotiating for changing the hiring requirements and greater hiring incentives and full integration of EMS employees as civil servants. That's another thing that happened is the previous city manager, towards the end of his term, towards the end of his time as city manager, converted the EMS to be civil servants and merged the EMS with the fire department so that the EMTs, the employees who work for the EMS, could be represented by the fire department union and could have access to that greater bargaining power for increased pay and access to firefighter pensions. The city naturally doesn't want to have to pay ambulance workers any more than the nowhere near adequate wages that they're paying them right now. And so Kenneth Williams, that's another thing that he's done, is put off fully integrating EMS into the fire department. The fire department has successfully sued the city, and a judge has ruled that Kenneth Williams does have to convert the employees of the EMS to be civil servants, to be civil service employees. Kenneth Williams has yet to implement that policy. Like I said, again, conveniently saving the city a bunch of money while keeping the quality of the services provided by the fire department and the EMS less than adequate for what the city needs. So those are the three main things that the firefighters are negotiating for: increased pay, better incentives for hiring, increased pay so that they can retain firefighters better. So many times we pay all this money to train a firefighter and get them on at the fire department, and because we don't pay nearly what comparable sized cities pay, these firefighters will get the experience as a firefighter in our city, but then move off to other cities where they can be paid more adequately, or can't live on the pay that we pay firefighters right now, and are frustrated with, the real difficult aspects of the job of putting your life on the line to be a firefighter for so little pay. So they quit. So either they move off or they quit, and we have a hard time retaining firefighters for the fire department. So it's very frustrating. People try to paint firefighters as oh, they get paid so much, now they want more. We can't keep firefighters because we pay them so little right now. So if we increased the amount that we pay firefighters, we would have a better time retaining them and would not have to be paying so much money in overtime all the time. So that's they're negotiating for higher pay, they're negotiating for better hiring incentives, and they're negotiating for full integration of EMS as civil service employees. Every kid's dream to be a firefighter in the trash. Finally, a week after their contract ended, they sit down and they start negotiating at their first meeting. Williams starts making it clear, he starts stipulating demands for several different administrative changes. The foremost of these administrative changes that he wants is the appointment of a second assistant fire chief. Now, the relationship between the fire chiefs and the firefighters themselves can be a good relationship, but is somewhat kind of inherently antagonistic simply because the administration of the fire department, people like the fire chief and the assistant fire chief, are city employees. They're part of the city administration. And their goal as part of the city leadership is to keep spending for the fire department low, to keep expenditures for the city as low as possible. Firefighters who are wanting the most adequate service for the people that they serve and looking for better compensation for the genuinely very hard and dangerous job that they do, are always working to increase the amount of money that the city spends on the fire department. And so in some ways, the relationship with the chief of the fire department and the firefighters can be contentious, because the chief represents the city and the firefighters represent the firefighters. What Williams is asking for in reality here, by demanding a second assistant fire chief, is an increased say over what happens in the fire department. Right now, those two administrative positions that are city positions that are appointed by Kenneth Williams, the fire chief is appointed by Kenneth Williams, but then the assistant one is appointed by the fire chief. Those positions represent the city's interests, and so by adding a second assistant fire chief, you would increase representation of the city's interests, which often, like I said, go against the interests of the firefighters and the people that they serve. So the firefighters have been frustrated by the demands for a second fire chief, especially the demands that Kenneth Williams has that second assistant fire chief be an appointed position instead of a referred position, one that is hired from experienced people within the fire department. Kenneth Williams can essentially assign any person that he wants that feels like he's the most loyal to him in that position, or the fire chief can. And so the firefighters are looking for more of a say and more representation in making that decision, but also more stipulations that this person who fills this position has to at least kind of have the basic understandings of what it takes to actually do this job, by kind of rising up through the ranks. The firefighter union members were, at the time, and have been, frustrated with fire department leadership for all the reasons that I've been talking about, but also because Earl White, who is the fire chief right now, has, like I said, really been working for the city's interests at the expense of the fire department's interests, at the expense of the firefighters' interests. And the firefighters have been frustrated with Earl Williams for a lot of different things. The administration has kind of worked to downplay the amount of hiring that needs to be done. They also feel like there's not any transparency between the fire chief and the firefighters. There's a bunch of different issues that they have. And so in February of 2025, by an overwhelming 85% of the vote, the union declared a vote of no confidence in Fire Chief Earl White and Assistant Chief Chris Singler, which is indicative of the idea that they are distrusting of the administration right now, and Kenneth Williams, in the middle of this negotiation, is demanding that they increase the size of that administration and increase the scope of that administration's authority. So naturally, the majority of the union objected to the appointment of an additional administrative position, tying up further funding and staff in admin. In January of this year, the union tentatively agreed to present a proposed contract to its membership for approval, having made several concessions, including a smaller pay increase. I don't think the number is public. I haven't been able to find it. But in negotiations, I'm pretty sure the number that was talked about, that the city proposed in negotiations, was a 16% pay increase. I love how far we've chased to this rabbit from the point of talking about our mayors. This is all really important. So, like I said, to reconnect it back to the mayoral race, understanding each of these candidates' relationship with Kenneth Williams and the things that he's been doing, like this ridiculous negotiation with the fire department, with the firefighters union, understanding what Kenneth Williams has been doing and these mayoral candidates' relationships to Kenneth Williams and what he's been doing is going to have a lot of influence on whether or not I am personally supportive or not supportive of those candidates. So we got to lay a lot of this groundwork talking about Kenneth Williams before we can get to mayors. In January, the union tentatively agreed to present a proposed contract to its membership. I think They wanted a 24% raise. I think they got negotiated down to like a 16% raise, or maybe they met somewhere in the middle, but it's definitely less than the 24% raise that they wanted. They made several concessions, including a smaller pay increase, a shorter contract. So instead of a 4-year contract like they had before, they're only getting a 3-year contract. So they're about to have to do this whole rigmarole again in 3 years instead of 4 years. And they conceded to the stipulation of appointing a second assistant chief. But the firefighters have to vote to approve this contract before it can be adopted by the city and the fire department. So the contract has to be presented to the members of the firefighter union to vote on. And on February 28th, the contract was presented to them, and 94% of the union voted to reject the proposed contract. 94%. This is not like a controversial issue where like, oh, just a few people are whipping people up, and that's why some of the people in the fire department are against this. By almost unanimous consent, the fire department said, "Are you crazy? We're not adopting this contract." Their reasons for doing so included objections to the stipulation of an appointed second assistant chief. Like I said, they don't really feel like they need a second assistant chief. Kenneth Williams' reasoning is that if we're going to merge the fire department and EMS, that's a lot more administration that has to happen, and so you need a second assistant chief. The fire department has kind of conceded to that reasoning and been like, okay, fine, I guess we can have the second assistant chief if you're really insistent upon that, but we don't want him to be an appointed position. We want him to earn his spot there. But the contract, but the union reps in negotiating with Kenneth Williams made concessions and included an appointed second assistant fire chief in the contract, and that apparently was a large reason why the firefighters so unanimously voted to reject that contract. They objected to the second appointed assistant chief. See, merging them would make sense because they're basically the same thing, but it's still a hassle to go through the merging. It's frustrating because it's already happened. This process of merging the two was set in motion before Kenneth Williams was even hired and should have been done a long time ago. This has been so much more of a hassle because Kenneth Williams has actively fought the merging and has actively fought converting EMS employees to be civil service employees. Just to the point where the fire union had to, like I said, sue the city, and a judge had to rule, no, you have to make EMS employees civil service employees. It had to get to that point before finally now we're actually talking about merging the two. And so it is a hassle, but it's been way more of a hassle and taken way longer because of Kenneth Williams' management. The reasons for rejecting the contract was the appointed second assistant chief, the shorter contract term. Like I said, this has been a huge hassle to negotiate this contract right now. We're going to go through all of this in a shortened 3 years instead of 4 years. I don't think so. No, thank you. And another reason why a lot of them said that they rejected the contract is because it was riddled with errors and typos. And this is like a legally binding document that the city and the firefighters are going to be held to. The fact that it has so many mistakes in it lends especially people who are signing this contract to believe what mistake is going to be in here that's going to entrap me later. If there's so many mistakes in this, how many more that I can see just immediately, how many more mistakes are there that I haven't been able to find yet? And so, like I said, just another reason you cannot have typos in a document like that. Yeah, Kenneth Williams, like I said, has seemingly a habit of putting together these like messy, ridiculous, error-laden documents to give himself a chance to be like, oh, there's a bunch of mistakes in that one. I'll take it and I'll get back to you in like 2 weeks. And so he pushes things off more and more and more. And the closer that we get, the evergreen clause is going to expire in September of 2025. And then the fire department will have to work with no contract and has the legal recourse to enter arbitration with the city to get a judge to rule for the city to agree to a contract with the firefighters, which is going to be, tons of money in legal fees for both the union and for the city. That's like sending the IRS wrong info on your W-2. Sure. So the closer that we get to the evergreen clause expiring in September 2025, the more pressure is on the firefighters to concede to the demands of the city. In the same way, whenever the budget was proposed to city council, like I was saying, it looks like ineptitude. It looks like stupidity. But Kenneth Williams is putting off negotiating with the fire department union, the firefighters union. And the closer that we get to that deadline, the more pressure there's going to be on the union to make concessions to what Kenneth Williams wants them to make concessions to. In the same way, he put together the budget, which was full of errors. He had to make several revisions to the point where the city council only had 5 days to approve the budget. Otherwise, the city was going to get shut down because it wasn't going to be funded. And so city council members just, might have something that they object to, but they don't object to it so much that they're going to shut the city down over it. And so they just kind of rubber stamp it and green light it. His seeming ineptitude looks like stupidity, but in reality gets him a lot of positive things for his leadership all the time. So that is where things stand with the firefighters right now. Most recently, as of February 28th, they voted to reject the proposal. I am not sure if they have met since February 28th to continue negotiations, but that is the next step, to go back to the drawing board and rewrite this contract, make even more negotiations and concessions, and then present it to their membership again. Hopefully, they will be able to do that before their contract expires in September. And as if all of this wasn't enough, like I said, the ridiculous severance package, the ridiculous demand for extra assistant city managers, the ridiculous ways that budgets are being put together, the deficit spending, the ridiculous way that the negotiation for the firefighters union's contract has happened. As if all of this wasn't enough, Kenneth Williams has the audacity at the end of last year, after the 2025 budget was adopted, he wants to tack on a $30,000 a year raise for himself. I don't know. I think it's $30,000 for all of them, but at the very least, it was a $30,000 raise for him and a raise of some amount to his assistant city managers as well. He wants a raise of $30,000 to his annual salary and a $100,000 increase in his retirement contributions. So completely is mismanaging the entire city, making every issue a huge hassle for everyone involved in the decision-making process. And then has the nerve to come and demand, in the midst of creating a budget where he's going to deficit spend by $3 to $3.5 million, has the audacity to then come and say, and actually, I want an enormous raise. A raise, the amount of my raise will be like more than the median salary of the average Beaumont citizen. Like, nuts. I don't understand why in the world he feels like he's entitled to a raise, or why in the world anybody in the city council would vote to give him that raise. But, oh my God, yes. So the city council is discussing whether or not they should give Kenneth Williams a raise, and in the city council meeting, which is attended by the public and broadcast live on the internet, council members Taylor Neild, Mike Getz, and Randy Feldschau, they all express concerns about handing out raises, especially while the city is deficit spending. And afterwards, Kenneth Williams emails these city council members and says, and I quote, "I refuse to continue to sit idly by for your denigrating insults and character assassination of my impeccable reputation and proficiencies as one of the most accomplished city managers in the world. He's not joking. He's not being ironic. How about you refuse his raise request and fire his ass and get someone better? Exactly. Maybe we should do that. He refuses to sit idly by while they assassinate his character and his impeccable reputation and proficiencies as not the most, so a little humility there. One of the most accomplished city managers in the entire world. Whoa, what the hell? What is... So, how dare they even question the idea of giving him a $30,000 raise? He's going to berate them for questioning his impeccable character and the absolutely undebatable qualifications he has for getting that $30,000 raise. How dare they? If that ain't the most dramatic statements I've ever heard, then I don't have a felon for president. Yeah, wild. That's so funny. It's not even like one of the most accomplished city managers in the city's history, or in this county, or in the state, or in the nation. The entire world is nuts for him to, not joking, unironically, claim about himself. When all they did was say, hey, maybe we shouldn't hand out $30,000 raises while we're deficit spending by millions of dollars. Roy West, our current mayor of the city, cast the tie-breaking vote to approve Williams' raise alongside council members Audwin Samuel, Chris Durio, and A.J. Turner. So wild, crazy time, wild course of events. That is Kenneth Williams. Any questions? So yeah, we just got done talking about Kenneth Williams' insane management, because I'm going to be using that as backing for my reasoning whenever I speak either supportively or not supportively of certain candidates further down the line. But having completed the Kenneth Williams section, we are now going to start talking about our various mayoral candidates. Your 5 different candidates for mayor are Randy Feldschau, Robin Mouton, our current mayor, Roy West, is running for re-election, Chris Jones, and Jude Paredes. We're going to start kind of in order of who has held the position for the longest. I don't know. That doesn't even make sense. I'm going to go in the order that I want to go in. I want to start with Robin Mouton first. Robin Mouton was the candidate, was the mayor for 2021 to 2023 until Roy West beat her in the runoff and became mayor. But she served one term from 2021 to 2023. Before that, she served on the city council for Ward 4 from 2015 to 2021. Before she served on city council, she worked for AT&T. That's exciting. For 32 years. And was a member of the Communications Workers of America. So part of a union, which is great. Union members and union leaders, whenever they run for elected office, usually do a good job of doing right by unions and working class people who are part of unions. She voted to hire Kenneth Williams, which is the real big vote mark against her. All of the insanity that started happening with the firefighters happened after her tenure. Another stipulation that we're going to be talking about for each one of these candidates is whether or not they are endorsed by the firefighters union, and Robin Mouton is not endorsed by the firefighters union. Robin Mouton Randy Feldschau is the mayoral candidate that is endorsed by the firefighters union. A couple of things just to give you a taste of some of her big policy priorities and the things that she accomplished or didn't accomplish during her time were downtown development. Of course, they all want to do downtown development. None of them can. None of them are very good at it. None of them seemingly know how to do it. Downtown has been a crap hole my entire life and seemingly will always be until any city council person wants to actually be antagonistic towards the billionaires that own all of these ridiculously red-coded, code-violating vacant buildings that are downtown. Nobody's going to do anything downtown until we eminent domain these freaking buildings and take them away from these billionaires who just want to sit on them. Roy West, to his credit, is one of the only recent mayors who has been antagonistic towards the people who own all the buildings downtown. We'll talk about that whenever we get to his slide. She one of her big initiatives was restoring Riverfront Park. She successfully secured the park was destroyed in 2017 by Hurricane Harvey. She successfully secured a $28 million FEMA grant to rebuild the park. And the park is still not rebuilt. Some work has been done to the park. I don't know if they do plan. Like, I know that they redid a lot of the barrier to stop erosion from happening at the park. I know that work has been done there, but the park is still not opened, and I have not been able to find anywhere where there's a projected date for the park to be able to. $28 FEMA grant would be so funny. Yeah. I've not been able to find anything where they're even planning to reopen the park. What happened to that $28 million? I don't know. $28 million is a lot to redevelop a park. And it's taken, what, 3 years to make any substantial progress in reopening it? So that's the point where I would say, you talk about wanting to develop downtown. One of the things that is the easiest thing to do, that the city has the most level of like direct authority over, the capacity to be able to build a park that you got money dropped in your lap for. We can't even do that. Can't even do that under Robin Mouton's leadership, apparently. However, one of the big she did increase funding towards infrastructure, and in funding towards infrastructure and infrastructure successes are often really thankless kind of accomplishments because they're not very well seen. You only really notice infrastructure whenever it's not working, and so whenever it is working or working better, oftentimes those accomplishments get unnoticed. And certainly Robin Mouton made several infrastructure accomplishments during her time, but kind of one of the most noteworthy is they started this new chlorine dioxide treatment program at the water plant to combat the issue of discolored tap water. If you remember, brown tap water was a big problem, especially in like the north and the south end of Beaumont. And it still kind of is a problem in the north and the south end of Beaumont, but it's certainly not a problem like it used to be because we're working to treat the water to make sure that it's not discolored anymore. Downtown is done for. It's a literal graveyard and not the place you want to have your evening strolls at, certainly. And that's a very frustrating issue because it doesn't have to be that way. And there's a lot of value to be reclaimed downtown if the city would just be brave enough to actually be antagonistic towards the billionaires that are sitting on all of those highly potentially valuable downtown properties. We can eminent domain those properties and pay the going market rate for that property, and the city can spend money. Like if we're talking about taking out a bond, let's do that. Let's spend money on getting these properties and actually revitalizing them and refurbishing them to make high quality, low income housing, to make good city services downtown that people are going to avail themselves of. Zoran Mamdani is a mayoral candidate in New York who I really like a lot. If you haven't followed any of Zoran's campaign, I highly suggest you go and you look him up. But one of his like flagship policies in New York is the city creating publicly funded grocery stores where the city would essentially operate a nonprofit grocery store because it would be publicly funded. It wouldn't have an incentive to make a profit. It would essentially be a nonprofit grocery store that would buy goods at wholesale and pass those savings on to consumers. And so estimates are that like groceries at city operated grocery stores could be as much as like a quarter to half as cheap as competing grocery items at privately owned grocery stores. And so whenever you are able to make those prices at grocery stores cheaper and people avail themselves of city grocery stores more than privately owned grocery stores, you also exert pressure on locally owned you also exert pressure on local privately owned grocery stores to lower their prices to be more competitive with the publicly owned grocery store. You could easily do something like that downtown. You've got so many resources downtown, so many buildings, and you talk about making a lot of high quality housing downtown. You talk about homestead exemptions to lower the tax rates on the property tax rates on homes in the area around downtown, and giving out grants to facilitate improvements on those homes that are downtown to increase the property value, taking eminent domaining the buildings that are downtown and making city created high quality low income housing so that people actually can afford to and want to move downtown to avail themselves of these services is the only way that you are going to be able to revitalize downtown. They keep on trying to artificially infuse, businesses onto Crockett Street and stuff, and none of these businesses last there for more than like a year because nobody goes downtown. There's nobody down there. Or the people who are down there are so low income that they're not about to be going to the freaking grill. So it just is a situation that's not going to get fixed until these candidates want to actually get serious with business owners in Beaumont, and they just ain't. So that, which is an unfortunate reality. Eggs ain't the same price they used to be. That is true. I still remember Ascend watching the last mayoral candidate town hall where West said the only brown water he wants from his tap is sweet tea. Yeah, that was nuts. I know what it's like to operate with a locally privately owned grocery store, I guess, with non-competitive pricing. Yeah, certainly. I mean, like I said, grocer. Gotcha. Yeah, and if you have a privately run grocery store, which is not what I'm like, nobody is even coming close to thinking about doing something like that in Beaumont. But if you had something like that, you could work to exert pressure on privately owned businesses in order to lower their prices as well, thus reducing the cost of living in Beaumont and helping citizens in Beaumont, which you would think city council candidates would want to be doing. But yeah, her infrastructure accomplishments are actual accomplishments, good things. And in 2022, the city approved the development agreement for the OCI Beaumont plant, a $1 billion industrial project, one of the largest investments the city had seen in years. So that's something great that happened under Robin Mouton's leadership. But like I said, in so many ways, city council is just here to rubber stamp and facilitate business that happens in Beaumont. The OCI was developing the plans to build this plant for like 10 years before Robin Mouton even got on the scene. So she gets to like take credit for that investment, but she didn't really do that. She's not the one like actively working to campaign to make it happen. And that's what I mean whenever I say like it's hard to use these points as any reason to vote against her or vote for her. A far more effective way of gauging the quality of candidates, in my opinion, is looking at the ways that they are antagonistic or supportive of administrative management in our city, and ways that they are protective of working class people in our city, and working class people's safety and security in our city. Moving on to Roy West. Roy West is our current mayor right now. He served as a police officer for the Houston Police Department in the 80s. He founded Patriot Security and Roy West Team Home Loans in the 2000s. He was also like a radio host for a long time. Apparently that's like a big way that most people know him, is by listening to like local AM radio channels. And he was elected as mayor in 2023. He had never served public office before that point. And Roy West, to his credit, has actually done some things that are pretty okay. He worked to create a tax increment reinvestment zone around downtown. And what a TIRZ is, in the state of Texas, we don't have income tax, we only have property tax. And everybody's property tax, you're not allowed to like take one zip code and raise their property taxes to a certain level and take another zip code and raise their property, like maybe even lower their property taxes to a certain level. Everybody has to be charged the same level of property tax. And those property taxes go into the general fund for the city to be spent on things that the city needs to spend money for. A TIRZ, a tax increment reinvestment zone, is drawing a circle around an area like downtown in this circumstance. And you gauge how much taxes are paid on property, and you gauge what the appraisals of that property is inside the TIRZ for like a year, and then you create a baseline for this is like the baseline level of the value of everything inside the TIRZ. And so the next year, whenever appraisals are done and property taxes are paid, anything above that baseline goes into a special fund to get reinvested specifically inside the TIRZ. So like if you draw like a box around Ward 1 in the West End, and you make that a TIRZ, and all the other wards are not TIRZs, then like in Ward 2, property taxes will be collected, and all of the funds from those property taxes will go into the general fund to get spent on all of the other wards. Where, because Ward 1 is part of a TIRZ, the property taxes up to the baseline level that was created whenever the TIRZ was created, the property taxes up to that baseline level will be collected and will go into the general fund, but everything above that has to be respent back inside the TIRZ. So it's a good way of taking the growth that's happening in a certain area and creating kind of like a input cycle thing. I can't remember what it's called. Crap. I want to say self-fulfilling prophecy, but that's not what it is. But you get the idea. The more development happens inside the TIRZ, the more gets put into the TIRZ fund to go back into funding things inside the TIRZ. Feedback loop. Thank you. Funding things inside the TIRZ, which will then increase property appraisals, which will increase the amount of funds that go to the TIRZ again. And so it's a good way of like, you can make TIRZs, and the area around Beaumont is a low income area. You can make TIRZs around low income areas. You can work to create policies that incentivize investment in those low income areas. And they get the feedback loop created so that funds go back into the low income area to help improve infrastructure and facilities in that low income area, so that their money doesn't all go back into the general fund to maybe get spent somewhere else. Because the way that our taxes work in our state is stupid. And property taxes have to be a flat rate for everybody. You can't specifically try to lower taxes on low income people. You can create like exemptions, like homestead exemptions, for certain categories of people to help low income areas, or you can create like a TIRZ to help incentivize growth in a low income area. And Roy West and City Council, underneath Roy West's leadership, created a TIRZ around downtown. Why that wasn't done sooner than this, I don't know. All these people that are like, oh, downtown revitalization. why have we waited so long to create a TIRZ? So that as we revitalize downtown, all that money can go back into building up downtown. I don't know. Anyways, so that's good. And he did do it. It's way too little, way too late. It's not going to accomplish. It's going to accomplish almost nothing. But it is the tiniest little fraction of a baby step in the right direction of kind of being antagonistic towards these billionaires who just want to sit on these properties downtown. He issued a vacant building ordinance for the downtown area. And so it means that people who own properties downtown, if their building is vacant, they have to register their building as vacant with a registry with the city council, which is conveniently not public. They have to register their building as vacant with the city council, and whenever they do so, they have to pay $600 to register their building as vacant. To a billionaire who can afford to buy an entire skyscraper downtown, $600 is like 6 cents. It's nothing. But every year that their building is vacant, half of the previous year's registration fee gets charged to the owner of the building. So, the first year it's $600, but by the next year, if your building is still vacant, it's $900. And by the next year, if your building is still vacant, I can't do that math quickly enough, but you get the point. $1,400, I think. I don't know. But it increases by 50% every year. Only up until you get to $20,000. In 10 years, you get up to $20,000. So this should have been done a long time ago. And the fees that are getting charged to these people, to a billionaire that can afford to buy an entire skyscraper, $20,000 a year is probably more than they want to pay, but it's like $20. It's nothing. Some of these buildings downtown are worth like $4 or $5 million. $20,000 a year, I guess that adds up, but that's only once it's been vacant for 10 years. And all you're doing is you're not incentivizing these people who are sitting on these buildings to sell the building to somebody who will actually develop them. And like these billionaires can create like shell companies and sell their building from one shell company to the next shell company and avoid this kind of fee. So it's dumb. It's nice. It is the smallest fraction of a baby step in the right direction. It's just not nearly enough. It's too little, too late. He, under his leadership, the Real-Time Crime Center came under operation. Like I said, this is something that was in the work for years before Roy West ever became mayor. But I guess he gets credit for it because it happened in the couple of years that he was mayor for. The Real-Time Crime Center is actually kind of really creepy. If you don't know what it is or that it is a thing, the police department now has a system where private businesses can register their cameras with the police department and give the police department remote access to their cameras, so that the police department can look through the cameras at anybody in the city doing anything. I don't know. It feels very Big Brother. It's very weird. I don't like it. And they talk about this, it's reducing crime. We stop so many crimes. And I don't know. It feels weird. And another frustrating thing that happened under Roy West's leadership, which you can kind of, he voted to approve this thing, was the no camping ordinance that was put into place this year, late last year, can't remember. Recently, it prohibits unauthorized camping on public or private property, and violators can be fined up to $1,000. And the city is now enabled to clear nuisance camps. So this is just a law criminalizing homelessness, and enables the city to put homeless people in jail for being homeless, and to impede their ability to ever get out of homelessness by strapping them with $1,000 fees for existing as a homeless person in our city. That's cool. And all policies like this do is serve to force homeless people into, hiding into more dangerous situations where they are not as easily capable of availing themselves of services that might be able to help them. And this is just not the way that you work to eliminate homelessness, especially in our city that struggles with homelessness. It's really frustrating. Oh shoot, I should have written this down. What's the shoot? Joe Biden during COVID passed. Joe Biden during, I can't remember the name of the bill. Joe Biden during COVID passed a huge bill that worked to tackle a lot of the issues surrounding COVID. One of those issues was homeless people on the streets were serving to be vectors of transmission for the disease. And so we increased rent subsidies federally all over the country, and we increased funding to services that work to temporarily house homeless people. And overnight in our country, we cut homelessness in half. And those funds expired in 2021, 2023. Can't remember when. Those funds expired after COVID was over. And then immediately homelessness doubled, went right back up to the rate that it was at before. And what's frustrating about that fact is that it demonstrates that homelessness in our country, and certainly homelessness in our city, is a choice. We choose to allow people to continue to be homeless. And if we wanted to allocate funds properly to be able to take care of this issue by subsidizing people's rent, by increasing funding for public housing and for low-income housing, just increasing the development of housing in general, we could solve this issue, or at the very least put a real serious dent in it. And no camping ordinances like this one that Roy West signed and voted for are just not the way that you even begin to approach solving this problem. So that's a frustrating thing that Roy West did. He also created a joint city BISD task force, which is nice. BISD is completely separate from the city, and the city doesn't really have any authority or control over what happens in BISD, which is frustrating because BISD is kind of a big reason why I think a lot of people are frustrated with Beaumont and are leaving Beaumont, and are putting their kids more and more into private schools or charter schools. So Roy West tried to the extent of his ability, extend a hand of partnership towards BISD in creating this task force. It's met 3 times since its creation in 2022, and the last time it met was like a year ago. So it sounds great. I don't know what it's doing or what it's accomplished or why it exists, or even if it exists anymore. I mean, I guess it exists on paper. And I point that out, and I point the failure to like actually do something about that, because one of like Roy West's flagship policies, whenever he was running, was like unification and community engagement. Like after school programs and youth sports leagues, like city operated and funded youth sports leagues, and all of these different things that would have worked to increase the quality of life for people in our city, but also worked to make a dent in like some of the high crime rates that we experience in our city. And Roy West just didn't do none of that. And I think a lot of people have been really frustrated with his lackluster leadership. He voted for every budget, or I guess just the 2024 and the 2025 budget would be the ones that he had the ability to vote for. He voted for both of them to approve them, even though they deficit spent ridiculously. He voted to change the definition of deficit spending for our city. He voted to give Kenneth Williams his $30,000 raise, and has accomplished almost nothing. Even the positive things that are happening, a TIRZ is of no help whatsoever if there's no development happening. The vacant building ordinance is of no help if you don't make it where people can't get out of it with loopholes, and you don't make the fees actually something that building owners are going to care about. Real-time crime center, I guess he kind of did that. He did a no camping ordinance, which criminalizes homelessness. I guess that's a good thing. That's a thing that he did. And then he made this joint city BISD task force. I struggled to find anything at all, any accomplishment at all, to put on Roy West's little slide here. Because he's done not a lot. And that fact is even more frustrating in the face of things like this. On the backs of Beaumont high schoolers, on a live stream that barely works, we spent tons of money on fireworks, on this whole event, just to talk about all the cool things that we might do by the year 2035.
I am your team captain.
I didn't mute that. The stream is just broken. Yeah, it's frustrating to see him have accomplished almost nothing. And then, have himself be carried to a stadium full of people that he paid for, with fireworks that he paid for, on the backs of high school students that he's done nothing for, on a live stream that barely works. Such a poignant analogy, I guess, for the way that the city of Beaumont operates. Trying to convince himself he's young. Yeah, exactly. He's not doing a very good job of it. This is some Tony Stark stuff right here. Yeah, the difference is Tony Stark is Iron Man. He does things. He actually does things that are helpful. And Roy West has done none of that. So I can't imagine. Well, I don't know why you should vote for him. But maybe you like criminalizing homelessness. So maybe that's a reason to vote for him. The next mayoral candidate is Randy Feldschau. Randy Feldschau has been a pastor for more than 40 years, and he has served as the senior pastor at One City Church, formerly known as Cathedral in the Pines, since 2005. He was elected council member at large in 2019. And there's just something real gross to me about a pastor feeling the need to incorporate himself into the leadership of the political leadership of the city. I feel like pastors probably should just be kind of inherently antagonistic towards a lot of what leadership in local cities is doing. I don't know. That's weird. The One City is a huge church with a lot of money, and that already is very weird. And then on top of that, to also be a public official is, I don't know, doesn't sit well with me personally very well. He voted for the implementation of the TIRZ. I guess that's a positive thing. He voted for the vacant building ordinance, which again is kind of too little too late. And he was on city council while they were attempting to get, Riverfront Park developed, and still have not been able to do that. So I guess that's a point in neither way. I don't know. He has, and to his credit, and this is a real thing, let pastors be pastors, and overpaid officials who do nothing be overpaid officials who do nothing. Exactly. This is a real vote in his favor, a real mark in his favor. He has voted against every budget that Kenneth Williams has proposed, and he voted against giving Kenneth Williams his raise. And I can't remember now that I didn't write it on the form, so I guess that he did vote to hire Kenneth Williams, but I think he might have not voted to hire Kenneth Williams. I can't remember. I don't know either way on that one. Sorry. But he has certainly resisted every budget that Kenneth Williams has put together and opposed giving Kenneth Williams a raise. That's better than the other two candidates that we've talked about so far. He is endorsed by the Beaumont Firefighters Union. That's a huge deal. And it's an important deal for like candidates to be endorsed by the local firefighter union, not just because like the firefighters are like directly working for the municipal government and therefore have close proximity to the way that leadership is happening, so that they can like be in the know about what candidates maybe we should and shouldn't vote for. Not only is their endorsement useful for that reason, but their endorsement is also useful because we need high quality firefighters, and we need the city to concede to what the firefighters say is an appropriate level of funding to operate the fire department effectively. And whenever a firefighter endorses a candidate like Randy Feldschau, and Randy Feldschau goes around telling everybody, you should vote for me because the firefighters say that you should vote for me, that gives them leverage over him to be able to exert pressure if he should win once he's in office, to say, hey, we endorsed you, and you ran around and told everybody that we endorsed you. And a large part of the reason why you got elected is because we endorsed you. You need to give us some concessions in these negotiations. I think that's an important thing for the fire department to be able to do, and an important thing for like unions locally to be able to do. We don't have very many very strong unions in Beaumont, in our local area, but that's why like union endorsement is a very good thing whenever candidates go around and use those union endorsements to get into positions of power. It then gives those unions the ability to leverage those candidates to make real concessions and write meaningful policies that actually benefit working class people in our country and in our city. So the fact that he's endorsed by the firefighters union is a big deal. I personally am probably going to be voting for Randy Feldschau almost exclusively because he opposed Kenneth Williams in the ways that he opposed him, and because he's endorsed by the firefighters. He was also on the city council whenever the chlorine dioxide treatment program started, so I guess that's positive. And he's endorsed by the firefighters. So he seems, nice. Fiscally kind of responsible. I'm weirded out by the fact that he's a pastor, and in his 6 years on the city council, I haven't seen him do anything that is terribly positive. But the firefighters have faith in him, and so I feel confident in voting for him. And he's opposed Kenneth Williams, and I will probably vote for him in the hope that he will continue to oppose what Kenneth Williams has been doing as our city administrator. Our last two candidates, they're going to be on the same slide. We're going to talk about them very briefly. They both have been very greatly outspent and don't have anywhere near the same level of name recognition as Randy Feldschau or Robin Mouton or Roy West do. So it's pretty unlikely, in my personal opinion, that either of these two candidates are going to win. But if you're looking for like an anti-establishment candidate, maybe one of these is a good pick for you. The only detail I found about Jude Paredes, other than his name, is that he's a retired nurse, and then I got that detail from the Examiner. This is his Facebook page. If you can't read this, it says random clouds or sign of an angel. Why was there an attempt to scrub this photo from the internet? That is the only post on his Facebook page. It has one link. So I don't really know a lot about Jude Paredes, but maybe you're looking for the freshest, newest person and you like him. Chris Jones, James Darrell Eller, held the sledgehammer in front of City Hall, and that was his whole campaign last time. That's true. I forgot about James Darrell Eller Jr. One like says it all. So this is the last candidate is Chris Jones. If you're looking for somebody more anti-establishment that you know a little bit more about, maybe this is your guy. He's run for mayor several times in the past. He's the president of the Carlton Pollard Neighborhood Association. He ran for mayor 4 times from 2011 to 2017. He's back running for mayor now. He is a member of the Beaumont NAACP, and says that there aren't any grocery stores in this area. The Carlton Pollard area is like around downtown. There aren't any grocery stores in this area. We are proposing to the city of Beaumont to advance our area with a community garden and orchard. Jude is on the record stating that he has run for mayor multiple times, and he runs whenever he feels like spending. He did say that. That's right. I can't remember where I saw that, but I did see where he talks about, like, whenever I get frustrated with what leadership is doing, I run for mayor as like a protest vote. Where was that? I can't remember. 12 News. Thank you. But yeah, Chris Jones, he on the ballot, he's Chris Unk Jones, but on all of his campaign stuff, he's Christopher Jones. So on the ballot, you're going to see him as Chris Unk Jones. He's at least identifying a problem of like food deserts, which is a real thing all across the country, but especially like in the north and the south end of Beaumont, where the only real grocery store that within the south end have access to is like that HEB on College, and like that's it. So, and these are all of your mayoral candidates. Look at that. We've made it to the 3rd point. How are we feeling, buddies? Got any questions, concerns, comments? Moving on to our city council candidates. There are 4 wards in Beaumont. These are your 4 wards. City council is made up of 7 different city council members. It's headed by the mayor. That's 1. It has 2 at-large positions who represent all of the different wards of Beaumont. So the at-large positions don't represent any one ward specifically. They represent the interests of all 4 wards, like the mayor does. So you have three positions that represent the entirety of the city, mayor, and the 2 at-large city council positions. And then you have an additional city council position for each ward. So 7 in total. Mayor, 2 at-large, a Ward 1 city council member, a Ward 2 city council member, a Ward 3 city council member, and a Ward 4 city council member. We will be talking about the at-large candidates first, since they represent the entire city, and they will definitely be on your ballots. And then we'll talk about the specific wards candidates. But those candidates will not be on every single ballot. They will only be on the ballot of the people who live inside the ward that they're running for. So, city council at large. These are your 4 different candidates for city council at large. Audwin Samuel, who has been on the city council for 35 years, which is crazy. Audwin Samuel. Albert A.J. Turner. Brian Nepvo, and Mike Williams. Audwin had previously been the Ward 3 seat, but now it has been the Ward 3 seat for 35 years, and just this year, I mean, it's kind of historic. Just this year has changed to run for the council member at large position. So that's interesting, and it gives us the opportunity to vote against Audwin Samuels. We're gonna talk about kind of some of the insane stuff about Audwin Samuel in a minute, but first, some more basic information. Audwin is the founder and principal attorney at the law office of Audwin Samuel. He founded it in 1994. He's been a lawyer, like he's in court representing clients as he's a city manager. I mean, not a city manager, city council member. Like all the city council positions are part-time positions, and so they most of them have jobs in addition to working in the city council. Audwin Samuels has his own law firm and is a lawyer. He has served on the city council for a combined 35 years, which is nuts. That is a long time to get elected and elected and elected and elected and elected and elected and elected. He is not endorsed by the firefighters union, probably because he voted to hire Kenneth Williams. He voted to approve every budget that Kenneth Williams has proposed, and he voted to give Kenneth Williams his $30,000 raise. Odwin has been, in my opinion, a pretty vocal supporter of Kenneth Williams, which I don't understand how anybody can be that, but Odwin is. A couple of important priorities for Odwin is that he believes that the council's top priorities should be fiscal prudence, which we're about to talk about the irony of that priority, economic development, and public safety. And he says that I think the way that they're depicting this budget deficit is inaccurate. The city is in a very good, sound fiscal position. He says that the way that people are depicting the budget situation is inaccurate. He says that the way that people are depicting the budget deficit is inaccurate. He says that because the city just voted to redefine the meaning of a balanced budget to say that if there are funds like in the rainy day fund to cover a budget deficit, then the budget deficit isn't actually a budget deficit. It's part of the actual budget. So he's like, see, it's not technically a budget deficit anymore. And so whenever people go around and they call it a budget deficit, they're representing it inaccurately. Okay, Odwin. But the real reason why you don't want to vote for Odwin Samuel, and I highly encourage everyone will get an opportunity to not vote for Odwin Samuel. It's very exciting. I highly encourage no one to vote for Odwin Samuel because of the insane David Moore situation and the fact that David Moore is now on the Bond Advisory Council. David Moore, if you weren't aware, was the mayor of Beaumont. He was the mayor of Beaumont a long time ago, and for 8 years, something like that, he was the mayor of Beaumont for a good amount of time. And in 2002, while serving as the mayor, David Moore was indicted on 16 federal counts, including bribery, money laundering, and mail fraud. David Moore was working with a real estate developer in San Antonio alongside another sitting city councilman, John K. Davis. David Moore was working with a real estate developer in San Antonio who did contract work. Terry Samuel, the real estate developer, wanted to do contract work for the city of Beaumont. And so he bribed David Moore and John Davis to kind of grease the wheels to get him contracts with the Beaumont Housing Authority. He also bribed them to approve a loan from the city for Terry Samuel's business to do work for the Beaumont Housing Authority and for the city. Moore, as well as another council member, John K. Davis, who was also convicted, took $25,000 in bribes from San Antonio developer Terry Samuel. Moore was convicted on 13 counts and sentenced to 20 months in federal prison, which he served at least some of. I don't know how long he went to jail for, but went to prison for bribery as the mayor of Beaumont. Alongside John Davis. The way that they got this money is, and I'm going to pull up the legal document here. I'm going to put a link to the legal document in the chat. The way that they got this money is that John Davis instructed Terry Samuel. The way that Terry Samuel got the money to David Moore and to John Davis is that John Davis instructed Terry Samuel to send cashier's checks to different Beaumont businessmen for services rendered, who then would the businessmen would then cash the checks, and then they would give that cash to Davis and to Moore. One of these businessmen who cashed one of these checks for bribe money and passed that money on to John Davis was Odwin Samuel, who was serving as city council member for Ward 3 at the time. I'm not saying what Odwin Samuel did was criminal, but I don't want to vote for somebody who, like John Davis came to Odwin Samuel and said this check is from Terry Samuel to you for legal services, and I want you to go to your bank and cash this check and then bring me the money. And Odwin did that as a sitting city councilman with a separate city councilman. In April 2025, Beaumont City Council. Oh, hold on, we're not going to get there yet. We're going to go to the legal document and read the story. John Davis, the only legal document that I can find that attests this. So this fellow that got money from BISD for contract work is just a trend chaser. Exactly. Calvin Walker, trend chaser. But David Moore was doing this way before Calvin Walker was. Actually, this might be around the same time as Calvin Walker. So this is the legal document. It is case number 0341026 with the Fifth Circuit Appellate Court. John Davis, after his conviction, appealed his conviction because he was like, oh, I signed a plea deal and you violated the plea deal, so I appeal this. This is the legal opinion of a Fifth Circuit Appellate judge's ruling to uphold John Davis's conviction. But in it details the way that this cash system worked. So after the jury found Samuel, that's Terry Samuel, the real estate developer. After the jury found Samuel guilty, he decided to cooperate with federal agents, I guess to get his sentence lowered. He disclosed that that after he had received the loan from the loan committee, remember he bribed Moore and Davis specifically to vote for the approval of this loan so that his business could do contract work for the Beaumont Housing Authority. After Terry Samuel received the loan from the loan committee, Davis, that's John Davis, the council member, instructed Terry Samuel to send $30,000 in payoff money. According to Terry Samuel, Davis instructed him to write out two checks, one for $21,000 to Odwin Samuel for attorney's fees, and another for $9,000 to Danny Fowler for contract labor. Davis asked Samuel to send the checks to Davis's home, which he did via Lone Star Overnight Service. Samuel's story was confirmed by records subpoenaed from Lone Star Overnight Service and a fingerprint analysis that showed fingerprints found on the checks matched those of Davis. Now, this is not something that's just alleged by this court that Odwin did. Odwin Samuel and Danny Fowler, the individuals named on the checks, confirmed to the court that Davis had asked them to cash the checks on their behalf. Like I said, I'm not saying what Odwin did was criminal. I'm saying that it makes me uncomfortable to vote for him, and I don't understand how he has continued to, since this happened in, what was it? I can't even remember the date now. 2002, for 20 more years, has continued to sit on the city council. I don't understand how that's possible. And it makes it crazier that all this happened. And you would think, if you were kind of adjacent to this crazy bribery conspiracy that happened, that you would try to distance yourself from that. You'd be like, oh man, I didn't realize what I was caught up in. I wasn't a part of that. I don't want no part of that. You'd think that you'd try to distance yourself from it. But in April of 2025, this year, you know that bond that we're all about to vote for? You know that bond that we're trying to figure out what we want to spend that money for? In April of 2025, the Beaumont City Council formed a bond advisory committee to investigate what local projects Beaumont might be able to take out a bond to fund. So that right now, and this is an important link. I'm going to give you the link in the chat here. You should go to this link and take this survey because this is the Bond Advisory Committee has put out this survey trying to get Beaumont's opinion on what they feel like we should be making a bond for. That we should be taking on a bond for. But the members of the Bond Advisory Committee were appointed by the City Council. Each council member got to appoint 2 people to the Bond Advisory Committee. One of Odwin Samuel's appointments was David Moore. You know, the guy who was convicted and went to jail for bribery to approve contracts for developers that he took bribes from, that you were weirdly involved in the scheme to pay him off. For what? Why? Why is David Moore allowed at all to be on this Bond Advisory Committee, to be anywhere near money that's happening in Beaumont anymore? Why is David Moore allowed at all to be on this committee? Why is Odwin Samuel appointing him to be on this committee? What is happening? I don't understand. It's psychotic. So don't vote for Odwin. That's my personal opinion. I said that I wasn't going to tell you who to vote for and who not to vote for. I'm going to strongly tell you that I'm not voting for Odwin Samuel. And you can do whatever you want. But this is crazy. People don't care. They don't see. I don't know. I haven't heard anybody talking about what's going on. That's all I can think of. Yeah, I guess. I think probably the more likely scenario is that just people don't know, which is why I feel like it's really important to bring this up in this voter guide. I will not be voting for Odwin Samuel. Moving on to AJ Turner. AJ Turner is the founder. Okay, now I'm leaving. See you, Liv. So long, buddy. Whoa. AJ Turner is the founder of AJ Turner Enterprises and the director of operations at TGPA in logistics. I don't know what TGPA is. It's like a delivery something. I think they do industrial deliveries. They have contracts with Amazon and FedEx. So he's the director of operations for them. He has served as city council member at large since 2021. He is not endorsed by the firefighters union. Sad day. Probably because he voted to affirm the hiring of Kenneth Williams. He voted to approve every Kenneth Williams budget, and he voted to give Kenneth Williams his $30,000 raise. I think that's probably a reason why the Beaumont firefighters are not endorsing him, and that makes me certainly disinclined to vote for him as well. He did form the Beaumont Youth Council, but I haven't been able to find. Apparently, they had some kind of convention or something that was facilitated by the Beaumont Youth Council. I haven't been able to find a whole lot of stuff they've been doing, but that's good. Facilitating programs for Beaumont youth is a good thing. And he, one of his top priorities is supporting local business. And this is an interesting quote for him. I like this policy. Normally, I would be apprehensive of a candidate who's oh, I want to support local business. But this quote is, I am working with state representatives on efforts to create more opportunities for local contractors and to explore ways to cap property tax rates for senior citizens, city employees, and veterans who have owned homes in Beaumont for 20 years. Don't look at him smile. How could you not vote for him? He is very charming. He's a nice guy. I mean, he does seem like a really genuine guy. And this policy is kind of not enough, but is positive. The idea of capping people's property taxes, especially for senior citizens and city employees and veterans, having to have owned your home for 20 years is a lot. But I think that's a state regulation. I can't remember. But that's good. That's a positive thing. I like that. But yeah, not endorsed by the firefighters, and has actively supported Kenneth Williams' management. The next candidate for city council member at large is Brian Nepvo. He is big, like, entrepreneur, community activist guy. He is the owner of 360 Tax Consulting. He's the owner of Arum International. That's like a golden bullion trader company. He served as that's not that's excuse me, served as council member at large since 2021 is incorrect. That is something that AJ did, and that's a holdover from the previous slide. Brian Nepvo has not served in any elected office, if I remember correctly, but certainly has not served on the city council. He is the founder and operator. He's the founder of Operation Beaumont Beautification, which is like an anti-litter organization. Cool, I guess. And the founder and chairman of Make Ends Meet Southeast Texas, which genuinely sounds like a really positive nonprofit organization that works to help single parents, help get single parents resources to continue to parent more effectively. So that's cool. He's not endorsed by the firefighters and has not held any position on city council, so he hasn't had any opportunity to support Kenneth Williams. So that's exciting. His priorities are improving city infrastructure, which one of these candidates' priority is not improving city infrastructure. Implementing measures to reduce crime, such as increased patrols and enforcement of public drinking laws. Okay. And he wants to promote fiscal responsibility. Cool. He seems nice. I like his organizations. An organization specifically designed to help out single parent households. It sounds great to me. And then we have Mike Williams, who is the last candidate for council member at large. He co-owns Longhorn Liquor, and he he founded the Southeast Texas Whiskey Fest. Since 2022, the Southeast Texas Whiskey Festival has raised more than $650,000 for cure rare diseases. It feels like such a weird, like, fake name. Oh yeah, we raised $650,000 for cure rare diseases. Not even like curing rare diseases. Like, I don't know. It's funny. I clicked through to the link to their website. It seems legit, and it seems like they do good work towards, like, actually combating diseases that there are not really effective treatments for. But the name is weird. He is endorsed by the firefighters union, and has been like vocally supportive of the firefighters. One of his priorities is public safety. He emphasizes the importance of adequately supporting first responders, including police, firefighters, and EMS personnel. That's what I mean by he's been, like, actively publicly supportive of the firefighters and the firefighters union. One of his priorities is fiscal responsibility, which isn't; infrastructure, which isn't; and business development. He aims to create a business-friendly environment by reducing bureaucratic red tape and supporting local business. I guess maybe sometimes bureaucratic red tape is good for, like, not having PFAS in our water or Teflon in our soil. Like, sometimes bureaucratic red tape is a good thing. But I guess like finding the bureaucratic red tape that is unnecessary and getting rid of that's a positive thing. So yeah, that's Mike Williams. He's endorsed by the firefighters and has not held public office yet to be able to actively support or work against Kenneth Williams. And those are your candidates for council member at large. Again, they are Audwin Samuel, AJ Turner, Brian Nepvo, and Mike Williams. Everybody in Beaumont, whenever they go vote, will get to vote for or against these candidates. This is a really important one. I don't remember if I specified this. This is the only election on your ballot on the screen that you will be able to select more than one candidate. So make sure that you don't just select one and move on. You want to make sure that you select two, because there are two council members at large, and it's the two that get the most votes. So you want to make sure that you select two on this one. Moving on to Ward 1. This will be the city council member that specifically is supposed to represent the people who live inside of Ward 1 here. It goes all the way from southeast St. Elizabeth Hospital area, like Calder, kind of close to, the Oaks. Is that what that area is called? Like Calder and 11th Street. It goes from there. Parkdale Mall is kind of in the middle of it, up, past 105, down like past Praise Church, all the way up to Pine Island Bayou. And if you live anywhere inside of Ward 1, you will have the opportunity to vote for Doug Dibadome or the Crypt Keeper, Corey Crenshaw or Mark Stiles. Full disclosure, Corey Crenshaw is my uncle. I know. Corey's great. I like Corey. I like Corey as a person. I like him as an uncle. He is one of my favorite uncles. He's on Facebook a lot. Maybe you know him from all of his many Facebook posts that he makes there. But the race here, he's running for city council member for Ward 1. Like I said, full disclosure, I am his relative, so I'm probably biased about this one. Not that I've been biased about any of the other ones. There were the races between Corey Crenshaw and Mark Stiles. We're going to talk about each one of them. Corey, out of all of the candidates that we've talked about so far, is probably one of the most qualified to hold public office, to run for public office. He has been a federal prosecutor for the Southern and Eastern Districts of Texas. He served as Jefferson County's district attorney. He served as judge of Jefferson County Court of Law Number 2, and he's the founder of his own law firm, Crenshaw Law Firm. He's been involved in local government for a long time, and so certainly from that proximity would have a good understanding of what it takes to govern effectively. He is endorsed by the Firefighters Union, and that's an important endorsement here, because I think of all of these candidates, certainly the ones that have been endorsed by the Firefighters Union have advocated for the Firefighters Union, but Corey has really gone toe to toe. Especially, we're going to read some of this Facebook interaction here. We're going to read this Facebook interaction here. This is Mike Getz posting. We're not going to read this whole thing. But Mike Getz is frustrated that you can, it's on the screen. You can read it if you want to. Mike Getz is frustrated that the Beaumont Firefighters Union is like taking sides in politics and getting involved in local politics, and is frustrated that they are seemingly using this tragedy for public gain. There was a man who got hit on the road by a car, and a ambulance was not able to get to his location because the EMS has, like I said, been horribly mismanaged by Kenneth Williams. Not that I'm saying that Kenneth Williams is directly responsible for this man dies, and I'm not saying that Kenneth Williams is responsible for his death, but Kenneth Williams' mismanagement of EMS, and the way that EMS has not been fully integrated into the fire department has certainly caused ambulance units to get tied up for longer than they should have in certain areas. Mike Getz says, actually it's fine that an ambulance didn't show up here for 30 minutes. The position of the Beaumont Professional Firefighters Local 399, and parroted by my opponent, he's talking about Joey Hilliard. We're going to talk about him in a minute. Parroted by my opponent, is that the outcome may have been different if an EMS unit had been immediately available to transport the person. No, it wouldn't have mattered if an EMS unit showed up immediately instead of showing up 30 minutes later. When a person sustains this type of injuries, as in this case, you don't just scoop them up, load them onto an ambulance, and rush them to the hospital. you immediately begin life-saving efforts at the scene and try to stabilize their condition. That is what happened in this case. In fact, when the EMS unit did arrive, the paramedic was still working to stabilize the citizen, and it was a few minutes before the paramedic declared he was stable for transport. There was an individual who was able to arrive at the scene, not the ambulance, a private citizen who was able to get to the scene and help this person. But ultimately they ended up dying whenever they were transported to the hospital. Corey replies to Mike Getz here saying, "So do you deny that it took 30 plus minutes for an ambulance to arrive at the scene of this tragedy, regardless of whether the person would have passed or not? That's not acceptable. How about Dr. Ray Callis, who didn't get an ambulance and had to crawl to a private car to be rushed to the ER, or Jennifer Gordy, who couldn't get an ambulance for her dad? How many will you need before you get it through your thick head that our fire department is mismanaged and we need change? Good grief, Mike." So they have a whole back and forth here. My point is, Corey has a large platform on Facebook, and he be posting. But he uses that large platform to actively work to defend the Beaumont firefighters. And I think that's a really positive thing. I can only imagine that he's going to do that more if he is elected to his position on city council. So this endorsement from the firefighters union is a big deal for him. He's also endorsed by former council member for Ward 1. He's running for the position for Ward 1. The council member who is not choosing to seek re-election has endorsed Corey. Taylor Neild has endorsed Corey, and is his campaign manager, which is crazy because, like, in this debate that Channel 6 did between Corey and Mark Stiles tried to be like, I only ran for Ward 1 city council member because Taylor Neild suggested that I do so, like implying to me that Taylor Neild like supported Mark Stiles, Mark Stiles in his campaign, and Corey like had to like correct him live on the air. He's like Taylor Neild is like my campaign manager. He supports me. Taylor Neild had to like put out this whole statement being like, I support Corey Crenshaw for Ward 1. I don't support Mark Stiles. That's a crazy story. So it's notable that he is endorsed both by the firefighters and by Taylor Neild. It's also really notable that he's endorsed by Taylor Neild because of the city council members who have been antagonistic towards Kenneth Williams' management. Taylor Neild is one of those people. He didn't vote to hire him. He didn't vote to approve any of his budgets. He didn't vote to give him a raise. And so because Taylor Neild is supporting Corey, that feels like Taylor Neild feels that implies to me that Taylor Neild feels like Corey will also play an antagonistic role towards Kenneth Williams. One of his priorities is fiscal responsibility. Again, talking about this antagonistic role that I'm hoping Corey will play towards Kenneth Williams. One of his priorities for fiscal responsibility, one of his priorities is fiscal responsibility, and he highlights that the $3.5 million budget deficit. He highlights the $3.5 million budget deficit and advocates for balanced budgets and reducing administrative costs. Like, he's directly talking about Kenneth Williams, like an enormous pay, and kind of, I think, implying here that Kenneth Williams should not make as much. Corey proposes establishing a citizens committee to review the city budget, aiming to cut waste. I think that sounds great. Incorporating more of the citizens' say into the process of Kenneth Williams making his ridiculous budget, I think would only serve to create even more momentum against Kenneth Williams getting what he wants with these ridiculous budgets that he keeps on putting out. So Corey is endorsed by the firefighters, is seemingly antagonistic towards Kenneth Williams, is endorsed by a city council member who is antagonistic towards Kenneth Williams, and has like already gone out to fight for the firefighters and presumably will do so if elected to city council. Corey is one of the most qualified candidates for city council. His opponent is also a pretty qualified candidate for city council. Mark Stiles served as state representative for District 21 in the Texas House of Representatives. So Dade Phelan is the District 21 representative right now. Mark Stiles was the Dade Phelan before Dade Phelan. Even though Mark Stiles, to the extent of my knowledge, was never Speaker of the House like Dade Phelan is. In his time in the Texas House of Representatives, he authored 157 bills that became law and 6 Texas constitutional amendments, including a ban on state income tax without voter approval, which is stupid. Income tax is a progressive form of taxation that puts the bulk of the burden of raising revenues on wealthier people as opposed to poorer people, whereas property taxes put more of the burden on poor people than rich people, which is why Texas has property taxes and doesn't have income taxes, and has outright, like Mark Stiles was like campaigning against income taxes by passing this constitutional amendment. But since then, we've passed another constitutional amendment. He said a ban on state income tax without voter approval, so voters would have to approve it. Since then, we've passed a constitutional amendment just banning a state income tax, even if voters want it or try to vote for it. Now you have to pass a constitutional amendment, a Texas constitutional amendment, before you can have income tax, which is ridiculous. And he was the group president of Trinity Industries Incorporated, which is like a train car. I don't think they manufacture train cars, but they like do maintenance and repair work on train cars and stuff like that. They service train cars. He is not endorsed by the Firefighters Union. His priorities are infrastructure development. Surprise, surprise. He supports the first responders, but again is not endorsed by the firefighters union. And he supports initiatives like developing a downtown hotel and convention center to boost economic development and foot traffic in the area. Why do we need a hotel downtown? That's like the city council's new pet project is they're trying to like pass funding to build a private public partnership to build a hotel downtown and like add that connected to like the convention center and stuff. And Mark Stiles supports that. So if you think that sounds like a good idea, maybe you want to vote for him. But those are your 2 candidates for Ward 1 council member, Corey Crenshaw and Mark Stiles. Moving on to Ward 2. Ward 2 starts at like HEB, the HEB area, Dallin and private public. Yeah, exactly. At like the Dallin, Delaware area here. And it goes all the way down past Phelan, past the Amelia area, all the way down past the country club to where like Major Drive meets I-10 down in that area. So like southwest Beaumont. The 2 people running for council member for Ward 2 is a person that we've already met here, Mike Getz, and Joey Hilliard. Mike Getz, he practiced law for more than 30 years as a solo practitioner for his own firm, and retired, and since his retirement now serves as a city council member for Ward 2. He served as city council member for Ward 2 since 2011. He is not endorsed by the Firefighters Union, and like has taken this frustratingly antagonistic relationship towards the firefighters, like I showed you before, like talking like, oh, actually it's fine for this ambulance to have taken 30 minutes to get to this person who got hit by a car and died. It's fine for that to have happened because this wouldn't have saved him anyways. And he also like tries to blame in this article, he was going around to like neighborhood association meetings saying that the reason why there was so much overtime, the budget went $2 million over, the city went $2 million over budget, paying overtime to the firefighters. Remember, they're 19 employees short and have not had the opportunity to negotiate hiring incentives because Kenneth Williams has been putting off the negotiation of their contract. Mike Getz is going around to neighborhood association meetings being like, oh, well, the reason why they're actually spending so much overtime is because so many firefighters are calling in sick. And the union called him out on Facebook. They were like, why is Mike Getz going around saying this to people? And so Mike Getz gave this interview to the Enterprise where he elaborates on his position. And I want to give him the benefit of the doubt here. I'm pretty sure he denies that he was going around to neighborhood association meetings saying that. But in this article with the Enterprise, he reaffirms the position that the union says that he held. This is a quote from that article. He says, in 2021, sick leave use was 54,139 hours. At the end of 2024, annual sick leave use was 134,851 hours. So either we have a bunch of firefighters mysteriously getting a lot sicker than they used to, or there is something else going on. Again, like his clear implication here to me is that these firefighters, they don't want to work, they don't feel like coming in, and so they're calling in sick frivolously, and so the city's having to pick up the dime and pay all the overtime for all these firefighters calling in sick. When you can account for the increase in overtime spending by the fact that we have more firefighters. The city voted to increase the number of firefighters that we have on staff in 2023 or 2024, I can't remember. But we have more firefighters now. So naturally there would be more overtime. And we are still 19 firefighters short. And so we have more firefighters, and so naturally there would be more sick leave because you have more people, you get more sick leave. But also, they've been working so much overtime, you have to imagine working like 12, 15-hour shifts at a time, back to back, now for what has been over a year that they've been understaffed like this. You have to imagine that takes a toll on employees to where they're not able to recuperate and stay as healthy, or they get burnt out and need to take a sick day. Like, it's ridiculous to think that like this number wouldn't have gone up because of all of the different factors that have happened. And it's even like more ridiculous to go around and imply that actually the reason why the firefighters have so much overtime is because they're all calling in sick because they don't want to work. That seems crazy to me. He is a strong supporter of Fire Chief Earl White, who, like I said before, the firefighters issued a vote of no confidence in. They are frustrated with the lack of transparency with Earl White, kind of the dogmatic decision-making that's happening, the fact that Earl White has not completely accurately represented the numbers of employees that the fire department is short, and a host of other issues. The Mike Getz, his role should be to be sympathetic towards the working class people of the firefighters union and not towards the city administration's, appointed, administrator of the fire department. Even though he's on the city council and he is part of the city administration, if you are actually serving your citizens who are better served by a more well-funded fire department, then you should be supportive of the fire department union and not be supportive of Earl White, who has actively, seemingly worked against the fire department union. To Mike Getz's credit, he did vote against hiring Kenneth Williams. However, he did vote for all of Kenneth Williams' budgets, that deficit spend, but he also voted against giving Kenneth Williams his $30,000 raise. So he has been somewhat antagonistic towards Kenneth Williams, which is a big point in his favor. And I do like Kenneth. Mike Getz is kind of one of these posters too, like Corey is. He be posting, and I do appreciate the idea that if you have an issue with the city and you want to get in touch with Mike Getz, all you got to do is comment on one of his Facebook posts. And you're going to get in touch with him, most likely. Mike Getz puts like his personal phone number on all of his campaign ads. Like, I appreciate that he tries to make himself available to his constituents and tries to make his constituents feel like they have somewhere where they can go to be heard. At the same time, I'm not a fan of how he tries to make himself the center of every issue. And I'm not a fan of the way that he's been antagonistic towards the firefighters. That feels crazy to me. So, but maybe this is your thing. Maybe you feel like the firefighters are going too far and somebody needs to push back against them. And you want somebody to be kind of more of a centrist who supports Kenneth Williams sometimes and is antagonistic at others. So maybe this is your guy. Your other option for Ward 2 is Joey Hilliard. Joey Hilliard served in the Army's Airborne Division in Desert Storm. That feels impressive. That's crazy. He is the founder and chief operating officer of HydroClean Services. He is the group president. Oh no, that's a holdover. Sorry, another slight error. Joey Hilliard is not the group president at Trinity Industries. That was the previous candidate, Mark Stiles. He is the founder and co-founder of HydroClean Services, not the group president of Trinity Industries Incorporated. He is a former YMBL board member, though, so I guess that gives him like creds for community involvement. A bigger credit in his favor is that he is endorsed by the Firefighters Union. And another additional credit, the Sabine Area Central Labor Council is our local chapter of the AFL-CIO. They have only endorsed 2 candidates in this election, and Joey Hilliard is one of those candidates. So not only is he endorsed by the Firefighters Union, he's also endorsed by the Sabine Area Labor Council. Small errors like this will one day be, maybe they already are, reassuring signs that this presentation is not generated, not AI generated, I guess you mean. He's endorsed by both the Firefighter Union and the AFL-CIO. So that's good. That's a positive thing. He is a strong supporter of the Firefighters Union, like Mike Williams and like Corey Crenshaw. He has gone to bat in public for firefighters. One of his big priorities is infrastructure. Another big priority is fiscal responsibility. He proposes negotiating contracts with refineries, which is a positive thing. There's lots of refineries in our area, lots of large industrial businesses in our area that like have tax abatements to where they don't have to pay nearly as many taxes. Like it's like an incentive to come and do business with us, I guess. I don't know why we do tax abatements. But in exchange for you coming and creating jobs in our area, we will allow you to pay lower or no taxes at all. And so there are several industrial projects like that that have large tax abatements. And Joey Hilliard is like open to like renegotiating those tax abatements. I think that sounds awesome. Do that. But he also wants to implement occupancy taxes on RV parks to boost city revenues. He's like, oh, so many people, they, to work in these refineries and stuff, like they'll send workers temporarily, and we have occupancy taxes on hotels so that whenever they send their workers to stay in hotels, we capture that tax revenue. But so many of them like get RVs and they come and they park their RVs here. So we need to tax RVs too. I guess. Sure. Why not? Joey Hilliard. Those are your 2 options for council member for Ward 2, Mike Getz and Joey Hilliard. Ward 3, this is going to be the last ward because Ward 4 is an uncontested race. That's Charles Durio. He's running for re-election there uncontestedly, and so he will get that position. The last one we're talking about here is Ward 3. And then we'll just move on to the BISD trustee election. I don't know why on this agenda down here I put District 1, 2, 3, and 5. The only contested election for BISD trustee, for the BISD Board of Trustees, is District 3. So that's the only one we're going to be talking about down there. So we got Ward 3 for the City Council and District 3 for the BISD Board of Trustees, and then we're good. We're almost done. Ward 3 is like the north end and like downtown. It goes all the way up like from the saltwater barrier, if you know where that's at. if you've ever been to the Neches River saltwater barrier, and like where like Academy is, it's like up in that area, and it comes down to Magnolia Park, and then downtown, and then past the Jefferson County Courthouse to like the Carlton Pollard area. Carlton Pollard, this area. The representative for Ward 3 historically has been Odwin Samuel. For 35 years he's held this position, but now he's running for city council at large. So he's freed up this position to be run for by new people. The two options you have in the council member for Ward 3, not Ward 2, sorry. The two options you have for council member for Ward 3 are LaDonna Sherwood and Terry Preston Roy, or Terry Roy. LaDonna Sherwood also is like a weirdly highly qualified person for this position. She has a master's degree in public administration, which is what she would be doing. I think that sounds awesome for people to be actually educated in the field that they're running to occupy. That sounds great. She has a master's degree in public administration from Lamar. She's the owner of LL Trans LLC, which is a non-emergent medical transportation company. It's like ambulances, but if you don't have an emergency. And Nell's Place, which is a club downtown, apparently. She's the corporate compliance officer for Aspire to Dream, which is a organization that helps young girls in the foster care system. Sounds like a great organization. She is endorsed by the Firefighters Union, and this is the one other candidate that is also endorsed by the Sabine Area Central Labor Council. Both of those are real big marks in her favor, I feel like. Having union support feels like a really good thing for candidates. One of her priorities is fiscal responsibility. She says, and this is a weird, I don't know, this sounds like Odwin to me, and I don't really know. I haven't been able to find which one of these candidates Odwin is supporting. I'm personally against Odwin, and so I kind of want to know like which one of these people is Odwin kind of picking as his replacement. I haven't been able to find that that's the case at all. I would think that he would want some say in who runs for his seat that he's held for 35 years, but I haven't been able to find that anywhere. And I don't know which one of these candidates Odwin supports or endorses, but this kind of sounds like Odwin to me. She wants fiscal responsibility, and she says, I attended a workshop on the budget, and it is, in fact, in surplus. It is not in a deficit. How? Your math ain't mathin'. LaDonna, I'm sorry. I don't. The only thing I can think that she means is the way that Odwin Samuel means, like, oh, people say that it's a budget deficit, but it's not actually a budget deficit because the city worked to change the city's definition of what a balanced budget is to mean if we go into a deficit and we use funds from the rainy day fund to cover the deficit, that's not technically going into a deficit. And so if you think of like all the money that's in the rainy day fund, like our deficit doesn't cover the amount of all of the money in the rainy day fund. And so therefore you could count that as a surplus. That's the only thing I can think that she means. But this is weird logic to get to a point that I kind of appreciate where she says, I'm not a conservative spender. I'm a responsible spender, and I do like that. The city should not be more efficient. We don't want efficiency. Efficiency with like ambulances means that we are only using a number of ambulances that is going to be as cheap as possible, even if that means that services aren't as awesome. Like efficiency with like the local tax office means that we only hired 2 people to run the windows, even though that means that the lines are going to be, 3 times longer. Efficiency is a bad thing in city administration, in my perspective. And so we shouldn't be conservative spenders. We should spend responsibly, but we should spend money. I think that's a positive thing to spend money to provide services to our citizens. Let's do that. So she makes a good point here, but she has this weird logic that feels weird to me. Also, because she's involved with like this Aspire to Dream, and she's like a counselor or something. She's involved with something else with kids. One of her big priorities is youth engagement. She aims to enhance public safety through programs that engage and support the youth in the community. I don't know how she really plans to do that, but that's one of her priorities. The other option for Ward 3 is Terry Roy. He worked delivering medical equipment for Harbor Hospice Healthcare. He did that job for like 10 years, a long time. And he served for 2 years on Beaumont's Parks and Recreation Committee, so Parks and Rec guy, which kind of gives him perspective. Whenever you hear him talk, he's only talking about infrastructure, like all the time. Infrastructure, his top priority. And he does sound knowledgeable. Like if you go and you watch the debate between him and LaDonna that Channel 6 did, he keeps on hitting the infrastructure horse. And whenever he talks about it, he talks intelligently. So he sounds, fiscally responsible, I guess. He says, I've discussed critical issues with the head of the Water and Sewage Division, and I'm aware of the issues we face when it comes to the declining sewer system. So he's like already doing the work to like engage with the people who administer these services to begin with. He also like has this point that like it takes honesty with the citizens of Beaumont to say our city drainage is not in the shape that it should be, and it's going to take a lot of money to get us there. We need to, as a city, rally behind spending this money to provide the citizens of Beaumont with better services. So, I mean, that sounds positive. He talks about it in a positive way. Concerning the potential bond proposal in the fall, remember the bond advisory committee is looking to see what we should spend a bond on, which is ridiculous. And remember, David Moore is on that committee. Concerning the potential bond election in the fall, he says, none of it should be spent on downtown development, which I like that forthrightness. Every candidate is like, revitalize downtown, revitalize downtown. That's all they say, and none of them have ever done it. I think maybe let's talk about revitalizing downtown and then actually do it. But I do appreciate being like, screw downtown. It's too big of an issue. It shouldn't be a priority. Let's do something else. And so I like him saying concerning a potential bond election, none of it should be spent on downtown development. In my opinion, the majority of it should go towards infrastructure. He likes infrastructure and public safety. That sounds great. If we're going to take out a bond election, like I said, I think that we should spend money. I don't like that the way that the idiotic tax system works in our state. That is going to make all of our property taxes go up, which is going to impose a higher burden on low income working class people than it is going to be on wealthy people in our city. But I think that we should, like, I like the idea of a bond. I like the idea of spending money wisely to actually fix issues like infrastructure. And I just like his forthrightness here. He also says, until we get people to actually live downtown, you're not going to have too many businesses that's going to come in and succeed. Totally accurate. And that's a part of what I was saying at the beginning of this presentation concerning downtown, is they want to like artificially inject these businesses downtown that only last like a year because nobody lives downtown. And so at the very least, Terry Roy is looking at the issues of downtown in an intelligent way instead of just constantly throwing up like flashy policy proposals. We're going to make a river walk. We're going to make a riverfront park. We're going to make a blah, blah, blah downtown. It's going to be incredible. We're going to build a whole hotel, a giant state-of-the-art convention center. Why don't we talk about downtown in a realistic way that might actually lead towards change? And Terry Roy is like one of the only candidates doing that. So that's cool. I like Terry Roy. Those are your two options for council member for Ward 3, not Ward 2. LaDonna Sherwood and Terry Roy. Whew. Last category. Moving on to the BISD Board of Trustees. I made little fancy maps for all the different wards. I did not make a fancy map for the BISD Board of Trustees. This map looks ridiculous because the way that the map, I looked everywhere for a high quality map of the districts for the Board of Trustees. This is the only map that I could find, the only current map. There is like a pretty okay one from like 2019, but this is a more updated version of the map. But it's like each one of these pages is an individual page in the document, and they're all at different scales to zoom in on each one of their districts. So I don't know, it's stupid. It's a very stupid map. But the only district here that has a contested election is Ward 3, that green district, this green district here, kind of in the downtown area. That is the only contested election. And the election is in between Treva Johnson and Woodrow Reese. We're about to talk about Woodrow Reese. Treva Johnson, I cannot find any information on her, really, of any substance. She has like Instagram and Facebook, and what she posts on there is like she does poetry. She's like a writer, and she goes to like BISD schools and does poetry events with students, I think. Like, I don't think that she's a BISD employee. And she does like poetry stuff at like local bars and things. On her election paperwork to get on the ballot, she lists her address and she lists her job as senior Shrug. I'm gonna put it in the chat. Senior SCROUHG. I don't know what that means, but I'm sorry. I don't know much about Treva Johnson. I don't need to know much about Treva Johnson to know that I don't want to vote for. I don't want to vote for Woodrow Reese, because we're about to talk. I know a whole lot of stuff about Woodrow Reese, and we're about to talk about it. Woodrow Reese has served on the BISD Board of Trustees for a long time, since 1998. He took a little hiatus, in that time from what makes that sound? I don't know. He took a little hiatus from serving on the Board of Trustees during the TEA takeover. If you don't know the story of the TEA takeover, we're going to talk about it here for a little bit. Woodrow Reese served on the BISD. This now is the sound of sneezing while in pain. Yeah, something like that. Maybe that's her job. Woodrow Reese served on the BISD Board of Trustees from 1998 until 2014, when the TEA in 2014 took over the school district. The TEA took over the school district because the FBI started investigating things that were going on inside of the school district, and lots of people were arrested and went to jail for lots of crimes. Just already the TEA took over for a lot of mismanagement that was happening. Different like grants were funded or bonds were taken out, and budgets were set for certain projects, and they ballooned to like 2, 3, 4 times what their original budget was. So there was a lot of like general financial mismanagement that was going on, but there was just a lot of stealing going on too. Devin McCraney was the finance director of BISD at the time, and Sharika Allison was the comptroller for BISD at the time, and they were both charged with wire fraud and conspiracy to commit theft after they embezzled $4 million from the district. These are people in the administration at BISD while embezzling $4 million of resources from the district while Woodrow Reese is on the Board of Trustees. I'm going to say there is no evidence that Woodrow Reese was convicted of any crime or that he was involved at all in any way in any of these schemes. But come on, all of this stuff is happening at BISD all around you the entire time. Either you are I don't know. I'm not saying he's involved, but you gotta be real freaking stupid to not know that all this is going on. Like, seriously, they're stealing $4 million. Patricia Lambert, the assistant superintendent, embezzled over $750,000, and she was directing teachers, staff at BISD to change the scores on their student star tests, to cheat on their star tests. Somebody else went to jail over the cheating on the star test too, like a teacher who was changing the scores. I guess she was like one of the only ones that they could prove did it. And Calvin Walker was a contract electrician for BISD during this period of time, and he overcharged the district for work that he did as a contract electrician. He submitted inflated invoices and avoided taxes, and whatever he was charged, he forfeited $3.2 million as part of a plea agreement, and was ordered to pay over $1 million back to the school district. Like, this is the stuff, you guys, that was going on whenever Woodrow Reese was on the board of trustees for the BISD. Calvin Walker still has not paid back even 1% of that $1 million that he's supposed to pay back. That's fine. We're still dealing with that crap. This is like the main reason why BISD has the reputation that it does. It's still pretty terribly mismanaged today, but it has the reputation of like being full of people who don't give a crap and just are there to make a buck and don't want to increase the quality of public schools. And it's frustrating because people like Greg Abbott, who is systematically working to erode access to public schools in our state and take funding from public schools and put it to the hand of private schools. People like Greg Abbott find ammunition for defunding public schools because of circumstances like this that happened with the BISD. The TEA took over BISD and did not relinquish control of the district until 2020, when immediately the next year Woodrow Reese was reelected. So Woodrow Reese was on the BISD Board of Trustees from 1998 all the way until so much fraud happened at BISD that the TEA had to come and take it over, and he was suspended from his position because the Board of Trustees wasn't functioning anymore because the TEA was in control of the district. And then immediately after the TEA moved on and the Board of Trustees could be formed again, Woodrow Reese gets elected to the Board of Trustees, which he has served on ever since. Okay, I don't know how this man is in the position that he's in. The same with Audwin. I don't know how people vote for this guy. How is he continuing to get voted into this position? I don't get it. I don't understand. More recently, BISD was ordered to pay $3.4 million in damages in a lawsuit that found BISD, in a ruling in a case that found BISD liable for civil rights violations following the sexual assault, trigger warning, by the way, the sexual assault of 2 former students. This is going to be some serious stuff that we're about to talk about, but Woodrow Reese has some wild quotes from his testimony in this case that are nuts. So I'm gonna go through some of this background, and then I'm gonna read a sizable chunk of a Examiner story that covers a lot of what happened here, and that has quotes from Woodrow Reese in it. In June 2024, BISD was found liable for Title IX and civil rights violations following the sexual assault of 2 former students. BISD was ordered to pay a total of $3.45 million in damages. Real fiscally responsible of BISD. Brandon Chillo was the substitute teacher that did these things. Brandon Chillo was teaching at Paul Brown Learning Center when sexually inappropriate contact with a minor was reported and known by multiple BISD employees with the authority and responsibility to stop it. Instead of firing Chillo for this sexually inappropriate behavior, BISD just moved him Vincent, where he then sexually abused 2 more underage students. So that's crazy. We're going to read some of this story here. BISD first petitioned the court to assert immunity from the claim. The quasi-governmental entity leaning on the blanket get-out-of-jail-free card to ditch public oversight in the courthouse. However, as alleged by the attorneys representing the child victims, the school district is not barred from litigation as it relates to policies and procedures that deny rights entitled to all Americans. So these poor kids who were sexually abused under BISD's watch sued BISD and said that they're liable for the abuse that happened because you knew that he did it and you just transferred him to another school where you empowered him to be able to do it again. With Judge Troncalli ruling that BISD would indeed answer the allegations before a jury, parties presented testimony from victims and experts, as well as several current and former BISD employees. Testimony from the BISD Board of Trustees came by way of current board member and former board president Woodrow Reese. How they decided Woodrow Reese was the guy that was going to represent him, I don't know, but I'm sure they regretted that decision. Woodrow Reese, who served on the BISD Board of Trustees from 1998 to 2014, until millions of dollars stolen from BISD by staff and staff-sanctioned cheating on standardized testing prompted the TA agency to take over BISD and install a board of managers. Reese was elected by his ward constituents again in 2021 once the district was returned to local representation. Having been a fixture as a district leader for about 20 years, Reese admitted knowledge of Chillo's sexual assaults of students, as well as former Ozan High School band director Parker Ferguson's serial sexual assaults of students. Woodrow Reese knew that this was happening too. After acknowledging his awareness of several cases of student-teacher sexual misconduct having been prosecuted throughout several decades of service on the board, Reese admitted to knowing, as an individual, that policy and training procedures were insufficient. You just won their case, buddy. You can't say that. Even if this is the truth. You can't say that in court if you don't want to get convicted, if you don't want to be held liable for what happened to these students. Specifically, Ferguson, who was indicted on sexual assault and indecency with a child, acquitted in 2002, reinstated as a BISD employee, and later indicted and pleaded guilty in 2007 to improper relationship with a student, and Tommy Bo Granger being indicted for indecency with a child, acquitted, and reinstated. Why are they hiring these people back? Were used as examples for which Reese had knowledge following their crimes. These people committed sexual misconduct while working for BISD, were found guilty of were charged with the sexual misconduct, but they were acquitted. And then they were hired back by BISD, and then they offended and were found guilty. I guess technically they were acquitted of the crime that they were accused of before, but they committed it again and they were found guilty later. If these people are convicted of these are alleged of these crimes, maybe we don't hire those people back. In hindsight, neither of them should have been reinstated, said Reese. You think? Adding insult to injury was the case of a teacher that made inappropriate sexual comments to a student and was said to have been allowed to resign before the complaint reached a level 3 grievance, which meant the board had no knowledge of the accusation according to its policy. See, if it doesn't get to a level 3 clearance, then the Board of Trustees isn't alerted that it's happening. And they can feign ignorance, I guess. Do you believe the board should be aware of all sexual misconduct allegations? Plaintiff's attorney Frazier asked Reese, to which he responded, "That's difficult to answer because the board supervises the superintendent, not the staff." You don't think that the Board of Trustees should be made aware anytime an allegation of sexual misconduct is made against employee of BISD? I'm not saying that like every allegation of sexual misconduct is, affirmed necessarily, but maybe the board of trustees should be aware that it's happening. Bring Reese back to the Ferguson case. Bringing Reese back to the Ferguson case of 2006, the BISD trustees' testimony was quoted, stating that the school district to this day needs to strengthen its policies to prevent student sexual misconduct, admitting that he knew policies and procedures were lacking in 2006. Nearly 20 years later, at the recent trial, Reese initially refused to agree that current policies should be strengthened to protect children from inappropriate conduct. However, Reese agreed so in a deposition just weeks prior. When asked why the policy had not been updated following any of the incidences of misconduct by teachers previously referenced, Reese said it wasn't a question he could answer, as that goes through the personnel office. Not my responsibility as the board of trustees of BISD. Reese admitted he never moved to revise or review training regarding improper student-teacher misconduct since 2006, whenever he said that he knew that it wasn't sufficient, and couldn't confirm whether or not his fellow board members had ever done such, but stated that he had conversations as an individual with the superintendent regarding changing the policy. Oh, well, that's good enough, I guess. I'm sure everyone would want improvement, Reese said, but we just stay in our lanes, said Reese regarding not pushing for implementing change in policy and training to further protect children against educator-student sexual misconduct. When Fraser inquired as to whether Reese believed protecting students was outside of his lane, the board trustee subsequently agreed in open court that policy and training should have been addressed following all proper cases of abuse. Yeah, just stay in your lane. That quote stuck in my mind when I first heard it. Yeah, they just stay in their lanes, My lane is not protecting children from sexual predators. That's somebody else's lane. As as a member of the BISD Board of Trustees. So that's Woodrow Reese for you. I mean, I'm not saying that he outright committed any of those crimes that were committed because of the before the TA takeover, but he certainly was around for a whole lot of it, and certainly had an obligation to at least be aware that these kind of things were happening and to fight against those things. There's no evidence that he did that, and certainly I would think that the BISD Board of Trustees has is that human nature? Is that spiritual malfeasance? I would think that certainly the BISD Board of Trustees has a responsibility to protect students, but Woodrow Reese doesn't think that's his lane. So yeah, those are your two options for BISD District 3, Treva Johnson and Woodrow Reese. I don't know much about Treva Johnson. I know enough about Woodrow Reese to say that I personally will not be voting for him. So that is, holy moly, our entire municipal election guide.